Today we open with a fragment recovered from a Babylonian clay tablet, more precisely from the one and only Enuma Elis, referencing the deity they called Marduk, whom the Greeks would later call Zeus, and the Romans Jupiter. You are the most important among the great gods. Your destiny is unequaled. Your command is like that of Anu. Marduk, you are the most important among the great gods. Your destiny is unequaled. Your command is like that of Anu. From this day onward thy command shall not be changed. To exalt and to abase, this shall be your power. Dependable shall be the utterance of your mouth. Your command shall not prove vain. None among the gods shall infringe upon your prerogative. Maintenance is the requirement of the sanctuaries of the gods, and so at each place of their shrines shall be appointed a place for you. Marduk, you are our avenger. To you we have given kingship over the totality of the whole universe, so that when you sit in the assembly, your word shall be exalted. May your weapons not miss, may you smite your foes. O Lord, preserve the life of him who puts his trust in you. But as for the God who has espoused evil, pour out his life. Fun fact, the Enuma Elis is estimated to be from the late 2nd millennium before the Common Era, or Christ, or the Last Reset, or the beginning of the current Aeon. Pick your weapons. You can pick all of them because we will excavate the universe again, revealing the information layers buried beneath millennia of worship and observation, stone and hymns. Jupiter, the colossal gas giant whose mass could encompass 1,300 Earths, whose gravitational dominance shapes our entire solar system, whose ancient storms have raged longer than human civilization has existed. The Jupiter awaiting you here exists simultaneously as an astronomical body, a mythological figure, a psychological archetype, a philosophical principle, and a living symbol. Through each reincarnation or reinterpretation, a new face stares us down, yet it's the same gaze, contradictory yet complementary, the same light, ancient yet eternally relevant and present. From the thunderbolts of Zeus that rewrote the narrative and hierarchy in the heavens, to the benefic rays of Jupiter that Renaissance astrologers claim to hold our destinies with an iron hand. From the supreme deity that Phidias rendered in gold and ivory at Olympia, to the expansive psychological principle that Jung recognized as the counterbalance to Saturnian restriction. We will traverse the full spectrum of Jupiter's manifestations, and of course perform some proper intellectual surgery. The journey ahead demands your full attention. I kindly invite you to wander with me through etymological labyrinths, astrological charts, forgotten cults, philosophical treatises, and cutting-edge astrophysics. All of them converge on a single point: this magnificent celestial body, this heavenly body, what it represented to the human mind across the ages, and what it continues to symbolize within our own psyches. Those who remain until the end will be initiated into a mode of perception where astronomical bodies are simultaneously physical entities and living symbols, where ancient myths contain psychological truths as relevant today as when they were first uttered in temples, now reduced to dust. This is a revelato, where I peel back the veil between what is seen and what is known, between the planet that dominates our night sky and the archetypal force that has dominated our collective psyche. I will not waste your time with nonsense, although I know that some of you will think this is nonsense from the very beginning. You are also invited to take a seat on this ride, because it's going to be an enlightening ride. Before we begin this journey through time, space, and consciousness, I acknowledge your commitment to genuine wisdom. In an age of fractured attention and simplified content, your presence here signals a rare hunger for depth, which I respect and applaud. For those who recognize themselves as inheritors of a lineage stretching from Gilgamesh to Goethe, from Hammurabi to Heisenberg, this exploration is your birthright. Now let us direct our gaze upward to the fifth planet from our sun, and inward to the archetypal forces it has awakened in the human soul, as we just begin to solve the magnificent enigma that is Jupiter. Cicero writes in his work of the nature of the gods thus: This is Jupiter, the governor of the world, who rules all things with his nod, and is of gods and men the sire, a propitious and all-powerful deity. Whoever doubts this may as well doubt there is a sun, for they are equally visible. Jupiter, the king of planets and gods, a name that roars with authority, a name that became synonymous with supreme authority, derived from Deus Pater, or Shining Father, the Proto-Indo-European sky god whose lineage extends through countless cultures and millennia. But what is Jupiter truly? A physical entity of staggering proportion, composed primarily of hydrogen and helium, a gaseous giant whose volume could contain over 1,000 Earths, or the archetypal ruler, the sovereign principle that has shaped human conceptions of authority, expansion, and cosmic order since we first gazed skyward. The truth, as I already hinted at, and as you shall see, encompasses both, and more. For Jupiter exists at the intersection of material reality and symbolic meaning, a crossing point where astronomy, astrology, mythology, physics, and metaphysics, among others, collide and merge into probably the most extraordinary godly story ever told. Consider Jupiter's sheer physical dominance. At 318 times Earth's mass, its gravitational influence on our entire solar system is not matched by any other planet. Its enormous magnetosphere extends up to 100 times. Jupiter's radius on the side facing away from the Sun is a protective bubble vaster than the Sun itself. And when I say Jupiter's radius on the side facing away from the Sun is a protective bubble vaster than the Sun itself, here's what that means. The Sun's solar wind pushes against Jupiter's magnetic field, compressing it on the side facing the Sun. But on the opposite side, away from the Sun, Jupiter's magnetosphere extends outward in a long magnetotail that stretches far into space. This magnetotail extends up to 650 million kilometers, over 400 million miles, from Jupiter, which is truly enormous when you consider that the Sun's radius is only about 696,000 kilometers. This giant magnetic shield protects Jupiter's moons from the full force of solar radiation while also trapping charged particles, creating intense radiation belts around the planet. It's like a vast invisible shield that surrounds Jupiter and extends far beyond it, showcasing the planet's immense influence even beyond its physical size. It's a perfect example of how Jupiter's influence extends far beyond its visible boundaries, a theme that applies both astronomically and symbolically and will resurface several times throughout this video. The Jovian radiation belts are so intense that they would deliver a lethal dose to an unshielded human within minutes. Power manifested through pure physical presence. And I wonder, isn't this the fundamental attribute of kingship? The ancient Babylonians, keen observers of the night sky, tracked Jupiter's 12-year orbit through their zodiac with remarkable precision. They named it Marduk, after their supreme deity, the god who defeated primordial chaos and established cosmic order. In their astronomical diaries from the late Babylonian period, approximately 450 BC, their calculations of Jupiter's position achieved remarkable precision, sometimes within fractions of a degree. However, their mathematical astronomy was developed by their minds with theology in their hearts, as Jupiter's movements were interpreted as communications from Marduk himself. This pattern repeats multiple times. Wherever and whenever Jupiter appears, so too does the concept of supreme authority or order imposed upon chaos appear. The Chinese called it Swixing, the year star, associating it with the emperor's movements and the regulation of dynastic time. Jupiter is also connected to Thor, which derives from thunder. Think about the word Thursday or Thor's Day. In English, we call it Thor's Day, after the same hammer-wielding Norse god of thunder, while Romance languages name it after Jupiter. Italians Giovedi, French's Jeudi, Spanish's Jueves, all deriving from Latin dies Iovis. When Germanic peoples encountered the Roman seven-day week, itself adapted from Babylonian astronomical frameworks, they recognized the thunderbolt-wielding skyfather Jupiter as equivalent to their own Thor. Both gods ruled from the heavens with lightning as their weapon, commanded respect as divine patriarchs, found sanctity in oak trees, and embodied righteous power. The fifth day of our week thus preserves an ancient understanding that transcended language and religion, and that the archetypal force governing Thursday remained essentially unchanged, whether one called it Marduk, Zeus, Jupiter, or Thor. Their cultural masks may have differed, but their cosmic function remained identical. So let me ask you, isn't this a testament to how deeply this planetary archetype was embedded in human consciousness across disparate civilizations? The cosmic lineage continues. The Egyptian god Amun, or Amun-Ra, while primarily a solar deity and king of gods, was later syncretized with Zeus by the Greeks after Alexander's conquest of Egypt, creating Zeus Ammon. The Romans subsequently adopted this fusion as Jupiter Ammon. However, these syncretic forms arose primarily from their shared attributes as supreme deities, rather than from astronomical connections. While the Egyptians certainly observed Jupiter, their specific divine associations for the planet aren't as well documented as the Mesopotamian traditions. But the cultural fusion of Amun with Zeus Jupiter demonstrates how ruling divinities could be recognized across different religious frameworks based on their common quality of supreme authority. The Indians worshipped Brihaspati, who was also called the god of Jupiter. In fact, Brihaspati is the root of the Brihaspatiwara, or Thursday in the Hindu calendar. Different names, identical principle, the cosmic king who brings order through power. Consider what 16th century astronomers observed when the telescope first revealed Jupiter's 4 largest moons, a perfect microcosm of the macrocosmic solar system. Galileo named them the Medicean stars, after his patrons. In fact, Galileo initially called them the Cosmica Sidera, Cosimo stars, in honor of Cosimo alone. However, Cosimo's secretary suggested Medicea Sidera, the Medicean stars, so that all 4 Medici brothers could be honored. But later, astronomers recognized them for what they were, a model of cosmic order. Jupiter at center, authority established through gravitational dominance, satellites moving in perfect mathematical harmony, a fractal harmony of celestial spheres, as always, as above, so below. Think about the social hierarchies humans have constructed throughout history. The sovereign is in the center. Society orbits in concentric rings of diminishing privilege and power. Is it just a coincidence that human power structures reflect celestial architecture? Or have we, consciously or not, patterned our systems of authority after the cosmic authority we observe in the heavens or even the entire existence? This correspondence between physical and social ordering principles reveals Jupiter's first paradox. The limitless sky god manifests through limitation. Similar to Saturn, boundless power is expressed through bounded order, the seemingly contradictory nature of authority itself, to enable freedom through the imposition of structure, to create space for growth by establishing boundaries. The Great Red Spot exemplifies this paradox perfectly, a vast anticyclonic storm larger than Earth that has persisted for at least 400 years, possibly much longer, chaos sustained through perfect structure. Destructive power channeled into enduring formation. The storm rages continually yet remains perfectly contained within its self-generated boundaries. Yet we can also play the devil's advocate. What human king or authority has ever managed this balance? To harness the raw power of chaos without being consumed by it? To maintain order without stifling the vital energy that gives that order meaning? This is Jupiter's first and most profound teaching, that true sovereignty lies not in the elimination of chaotic forces, but in their integration into a higher structural harmony. The many Greek and Roman stories about Zeus or Jupiter are a testament. The astronomical reality is principally familiar. Cicero also references the Stoic Chrysippus when noting that Jupiter is that immutable and eternal law which guides and directs us in our manners, and this he calls fatal necessity, the everlasting verity of future events. The Roman Seneca, tutor to Emperor Nero, captured this Jovian wisdom perfectly when he wrote, Ille ipse omnium conditor et rector scripsit quidem fata, sed sequitur, semper pare, semel iusit. The creator and ruler of the universe himself wrote the decrees of fate, but he follows them. He obeys forever, he decreed but once. Even the supreme deity is bound by cosmic order. Authority is expressed through submission to principle rather than arbitrary dominance. This brings us to Jupiter's core paradox, one that will echo throughout our exploration. Jupiter represents both expansion and limitation, freedom and structure, revolution and establishment. The king of gods who overthrew his father, Saturn, only to establish a new order that in many ways perpetuated the old. The rebel who becomes ruler, the revolutionary who establishes convention. Keep this paradox in mind as we will approach Jupiter's mythological manifestations, where these contradictions play out through narratives that also structured human civilizations and libraries for millennia. I begin to sing of Zeus, the best and greatest of gods, far-seeing, mighty, fulfiller of designs, who confides his tight-knit schemes to Themis as she sits leaning against him. Be gracious, far-seeing son of Kronos, most glorious and great. Thus begins the Homeric hymn to Zeus, immortalizing the essence of the thunder god who became the sovereign of the Greek pantheon. Yet Zeus, whom the Romans would call Jupiter, was far more than a literary invention. He was the personification of a psychological and cosmic principle so fundamental that virtually every Indo-European culture developed its own version of him. The Sanskrit Dyaus, the Latin Jupiter, the Greek Zeus, and the Lithuanian Dievas all derive from the same Proto-Indo-European root dieus, meaning sky or day bright. Meanwhile, the Germanic tu/tyr, associated with Tuesday, shares this linguistic heritage but evolved as a war god rather than a thunder god. The Celtic Taranis and Hittite Tahun, while functionally similar as storm deities, have different etymological origins. Nevertheless, most of these sky-father figures share remarkable functional similarities, wielding thunderbolts, ruling from celestial realms, and establishing cosmic order through divine authority and weather phenomena. Why this remarkable consistency? Because Jupiter represents something fundamental to human experience, the archetype of sovereign power, of authority that manifests from above, illuminating and transforming through sudden revelation. Just think about the phenomenology of lightning itself. In an instant, it transforms absolute darkness into blinding illumination. It bridges heaven and earth, bringing celestial fire to the terrestrial realm. It demonstrates power that is both creative and destructive simultaneously, devastating in its impact yet essential for the nitrogen cycle that sustains life, the perfect natural symbol for transcendent authority. Zeus's mythic biography reflects this symbolic pattern. Born in secret, hidden away from his father Kronos, Saturn, who devoured his siblings, Zeus returns as the liberator who frees his brothers and sisters from paternal tyranny. The old order of time and limitation gives way to a new dispensation based on law and relation. The solitary rule of Kronos is replaced by an Olympic pantheon, unity expressed through multiplicity, or unity in diversity, if you will. Another Jovian paradox. The liberator becomes the established power. The revolutionary becomes the institution. Zeus overthrows the father only to become, in many ways, like the father, albeit governing through law rather than appetite. The Titanomachy, that great war between old and new gods, results in a new restructured and long-lasting hierarchy. The Prometheus myth reveals this tension perfectly. Having helped Zeus establish his reign, Prometheus steals fire from Olympus and gives it to humanity. For this, Zeus has him bound to a rock where an eagle eats his liver daily. The liberator now punishes liberation. The revolutionary god now preserves the hierarchy he once challenged. Nietzsche recognized this pattern. Almost every party of the mind eventually reaches that feminine delicacy where it takes offense at the consistency of its opponent. Then one day they all become defenders of the status quo. Even the sky god is subject to this psychological tendency. The revolutionary fire cools into establishment ice. Yet Zeus Jupiter never fully calcifies into tyranny, although he did justify a few means. However, unlike his father Kronos, he rules through law, nomos, rather than arbitrary power. He establishes a covenant rather than demanding blind obedience. He creates the Olympic Council rather than ruling alone. Even when punishing Prometheus, he eventually allows Heracles to free the Titan. This is Jupiter's defining quality as sovereign. He represents authority that, while absolute in power, expresses itself through relationship and proportion. It's not raw domination. This distinction between arbitrary power and principled authority appears throughout Greek thought. Aristotle noted that while a tyrant rules according to his own interests, a true king governs for the benefit of his subjects. Similarly, Zeus doesn't command the elements through brute force or punishment, but through harmony with their nature. When he brings storms, it is not to enslave the waters, but to participate in the natural order. The comparison is telling. Barbarian power seeks to dominate through force. Civilized, Jovian power seeks to govern through harmony with natural law. The difference between tyranny and true sovereignty, or at least so it is recounted. Jupiter's mythic marriages and affairs further illustrate this principle. He weds Metis, wisdom, then Themis, law, then Eurynome, wide rule, then Mnemosyne, memory. Each union is an integration of a quality necessary for just rule. Even his infamous philandering can be read as the necessary engagement of sovereign power with all aspects of reality, refusing isolation in transcendent remove. Unlike the remote god of monastic Christianity, Jupiter, Zeus, remains engaged with the world in all its messy complexity. He thunders, he transforms, he impregnates, he arbitrates, and he expresses his power vigorously rather than in distant perfection. The sovereign who walks among his subjects rather than remaining cloistered in celestial isolation. Roman statesman Cicero understood this aspect of Jupiter when he wrote in De Natura Deorum, Jupiter himself, the name means the helping father, whom with a change of inflection we style Jove from juvare to help. The poets call him father of gods and men, and our ancestors entitled him best and greatest, putting the title best, that is most beneficent before that of greatest. Because universal beneficence is greater, or at least more lovable, than the possession of great wealth. Zeus, Jupiter, is thus a helpful and successful god, concerned with worldly flourishing rather than abstract moral perfection or dineros. However, Cicero later continues, did anyone ever render thanks to the gods because he was a good man? No, but because he was rich, honored, secure. The reason why men give to Jupiter the titles of best and greatest is not that they think that he makes us just, temperate, or wise, but safe, secure, wealthy, and opulent. This is a rather practical king god. Abstract principles for another time, sir. In the Roman cult, Jupiter formed the Capitoline triad alongside Juno and Minerva because he recognized the practicality of sovereignty balanced by relationship, Juno, and wisdom, Minerva. The Romans, with their genius for governance, recognized that effective authority requires more than raw power. It demands integration with other principles like a whole that needs its parts. Now think about how the Roman calendar honored Jupiter. His festival of Ludi Romani lasted from September 5th to September 19th, a timing that aligned with the harvest and vintage. Of course, the ultimate cosmic authority was connected to the agricultural cycles that sustained human life because divine power needs to be grounded in practical provision rather than abstract dogma. Jupiter's priest, the Flamen Dialis, was subject to a multitude of remarkable restrictions. He could not ride a horse, touch leavened bread, walk under a vine, or witness an army being marshaled, and he had to return to the city before night. Why these specific prohibitions? Because they maintained the priest's connection to the primordial pre-civilizational aspect of Jupiter, the wild thunder god who preceded the lawgiver. This tension between wild power and civilized order is characteristic to Jupiter and embodied in the highest way. The thunder god who becomes the upholder of law, the revolutionary who establishes convention, the celestial power who concerns himself with human affairs. But these contradictions are not to be resolved, but to be held in dynamic tension. The true meaning of sovereignty. As we move now to examine Jupiter's philosophical dimensions, remember this fundamental paradox, the same paradox. True authority contains within itself the very freedom it appears to limit. The thunderbolt both destroys and illuminates. The king both constrains and enables. Jupiter is simultaneously the power that establishes boundaries and the power that transcends them. Plato reimagines the myths of Zeus. He transforms him into a philosophical symbol of justice and life-giving order. He writes in the Republic, "God, if he be good, is not the author of all things, as the many assert, but he is the cause of a few things only, and not of most things that occur to men. For few are the goods of human life, and many are the evils, and the good is to be attributed to God alone. Of the evils, the causes are to be sought elsewhere, and not in him." We must not listen to Homer or to any other poet who is guilty of the folly of saying that two casks lie at the threshold of Zeus, full of lots, one of good, the other of evil lots, and that he to whom Zeus gives a mixture of the two sometimes meets with evil fortune, at other times with good. But that he to whom is given the cup of unmingled ill, him wild hunger drives o'er the beauteous earth, and again Zeus, who is the dispenser of good and evil to us. And if anyone asserts that the violation of oaths and treaties, which was really the work of Pandarus, was brought about by Athenian Zeus, or that the strife and contention of the gods were instigated by Themis and Zeus, he shall not have our approval. Neither will we allow our young men to hear the words of Aeschylus, that God plants guilt among men when he desires utterly to destroy a house. Plato's critique here is sharp and revolutionary for that time. In Homer's Iliad, Zeus is depicted as a god who governs fate from two jars, one of blessings, one of curses, distributing them at his discretion. This makes him a capricious figure, unpredictable and morally ambiguous. Plato rejects this entirely. He insists that if Jupiter, Zeus, is good, he can only be the cause of good things, justice, order, and the rare blessings of human life. Evil, he argues, must have other origins, such as human imperfection or the chaos of the material dimension. Its consequences are immense, and they overflow into our oceans today. Jupiter's famous thunderbolts, traditionally symbols of divine wrath or punishment, are reframed as tools of cosmic justice, enforcing a higher law rather than arbitrary will. Plato's goal in the Republic is to design an ideal state, and he believes that myths shaping young minds must reflect truth and goodness. By purging Zeus of any association with evil, Plato elevates him into a symbol of divine purity and rational order, an opposite of the volatile deity of epic tradition. Then Plato continues, "And if a poet writes of the sufferings of Niobe, the subject of the tragedy in which these iambic verses occur, or of the house of Pelops, or of the Trojan War, or on any similar theme, either we must not permit him to say that these are the works of God, or if they are of God, he must devise some explanation of them such as we are seeking. He must say that God did what was just and right, and they were the better for being punished, but that those who are punished are miserable, and that God is the author of their misery. The poet is not to be permitted to say, though he may say that the wicked are miserable because they require to be punished, and are benefited by receiving punishment from God, but that God being good is the author of evil to anyone is to be strenuously denied, and not to be said or sung or heard in verse or prose by anyone, whether old or young, in any well-ordered commonwealth. Such a fiction is suicidal, ruinous, impious." Here, Plato confronts the issue of suffering. Stories like Niobe's endless weeping or the bloodshed of Troy are staples of Greek tragedy, often tied to divine will. Plato doesn't deny that Jupiter might act in these tales, but he sets strict rules. If the god is involved, it must be as an agent of justice, not malice. Punishment from Jupiter is a corrective measure and a bitter medicine that ultimately heals. To say that God causes misery for its own sake is impious and destabilizing to society. Instead, poets must show that the wicked suffer because they need discipline, and through Jupiter's just intervention they are improved. Divine action is now inherently beneficial. Plato insists that God only produces good. But Plato doesn't limit himself to justice. He also explores the god's essence through language in Cratylus. The name of Zeus is divided into two parts, for some call him Xena, and use the one half, and others who use the other half call him Dia. The two together signify the nature of the god. For there is none who is more the author of life to us and to all than the Lord and King of all. Wherefore we are right in calling him Zena and Dia, which are one name, although divided, meaning the God through whom all creatures always have life. De on zen e passi toi zosinu parce. Through this etymological play, Plato casts Jupiter as the source of life itself. The dual names, Zena and Dia, merge into a single concept, the god through whom all creatures always have life. Jupiter is painted by Plato as the vital force sustaining existence, a principle of being as much as a deity of order. Synthesizing these passages, Plato's Jupiter emerges as a layered yet coherent figure, the source of good. He authors only the good, leaving evil to other causes. The just punisher. When he intervenes in human affairs, it's with rational justice, turning punishment into a path to improvement. The giver of life. His very name reflects his role as the life force that animates all things. Not a Zeus of lightning and lust, but a philosophical ideal, a Jupiter who embodies the harmony of goodness, justice, and existence. Why? Because Plato thinks society needs it, for social purposes. Misrepresenting Jupiter as a source of evil undermines the moral order of the Commonwealth, while portraying him as a just and life-giving force reinforces a society built on reason and virtue. Good try, Plato. In this light, his Jupiter is beyond myth, becoming a key of his broader philosophy, a universe governed by rational principles, where even the gods must align with the good. The thunderbolts remain, but they strike with purpose, illuminating a world where justice and life prevail. In Plato's Timaeus, the universe unfolds through the work of the demiurge, a divine craftsman who brings order from chaos with reason and goodness. Here we find a relevant and beautiful passage. This passage begins by situating Zeus, Jupiter, within a divine genealogy. Oceanus and Tethys were the children of earth and heaven, and from these sprang Phorcys and Cronos and Rhea and all that generation. And from Cronos and Rhea sprang Zeus and Hera and all those who are said to be their brethren. This lineage places Zeus among the gods, but not at the pinnacle, not at the zenith. Instead, the demiurge stands above, addressing all gods, those who visibly appear in their revolutions, like Zeus, linked to celestial order, and those of a more retiring nature, as his creations. Gods, children of gods, who are my works, and of whom I am the artificer and father, my creations are indissoluble. If so, I will. All that is bound may be undone, but only an evil being would wish to undo that which is harmonious and happy. Wherefore, since ye are but creatures, ye are not altogether immortal and indissoluble, but ye shall certainly not be dissolved, nor be liable to the fate of death, having in my will a greater and mightier bond than those with which ye were bound at the time of your birth. Here the demiurge asserts his supreme authority. Zeus and his fellow gods owe their existence to him, their immortality secured by his will, a greater and mightier bond. This distinction is crucial. Unlike the mythological Zeus, who wields thunderbolts as the king of gods, Plato's Zeus is subordinate to a higher rational principle. Yet, philosophically, Zeus often merges with the demiurge, symbolizing the order and justice that permeate the cosmos. I'm even wondering if Plato wanted to replace Zeus with the demiurge. The demiurge then delegates the creation of mortal beings to the gods, including Zeus, revealing a collaborative cosmic design. 3 tribes of mortal beings remain to be created. Without them, the universe will be incomplete, for it will not contain every kind of animal which it ought to contain, if it is to be perfect. On the other hand, if they were created by me and received life at my hands, they would be on an equality with the gods. In order then that they may be mortal, and that this universe may be truly universal, do ye, according to your natures, betake yourselves to the formation of animals, imitating the power which was shown by me in creating you. This delegation ensures the universe's completeness while preserving a hierarchy. Mortals must be perishable, distinct from the gods. The demiurge sows the divine part of the soul, the guiding principle tied to justice, and entrusts the gods to interweave the mortal with the immortal, crafting living creatures that grow, eat, and die. Zeus, as one of these gods, becomes a custodian of this process, shaping mortal life under the demiurge's blueprint. This mirrors Jupiter's mythological role as a ruler who maintains order, now elevated to a philosophical executor of divine will. The passage deepens with the demiurge's creation of human souls, each tied to a star and governed by the laws of destiny. And having made it, he divided the whole mixture into souls equal in number to the stars, and assigned each soul to a star. And having there placed them as in a chariot, he showed them the nature of the universe, and declared to them the laws of destiny, according to which their first birth would be one and the same for all. No one should suffer a disadvantage at his hands. They were to be sown in the instruments of time severally adapted to them, and to come forth the most religious of animals. This cosmic fairness, every soul starting equal, assigned to stars and sown into time, planets, sets the stage for a moral framework. As mortals, humans gain sensation, love, fear and anger, emotions that test their reason. If they conquered these, they would live righteously, and if they were conquered by them, unrighteously. He who lived well during his appointed time was to return and dwell in his native star, and there he would have a blessed and congenial existence. But if he failed in attaining this, at the second birth he would pass into a woman. And if, when in that state of being, he did not desist from evil, he would continually be changed into some brute who resembled him in the evil nature which he had acquired. This system of reincarnation ties virtue to cosmic reward and vice to transformation, reflecting Plato's vision of justice. Reason must overcome the turbulent and irrational mob of desires, a struggle overseen by the gods, including Zeus, who pilot the mortal animal and avert all but self-inflicted evils. Here, Jupiter's philosophical role as a bringer of justice aligns with the demiurge's laws, reinforcing order through moral accountability. The passages from the Timaeus reveal Jupiter's place in Plato's cosmology. Zeus is a subordinate, yet symbolic, a created god, not the ultimate creator, yet his role in shaping mortals corresponds to the rational order of the demiurge. Remember that in the Republic, Plato equates Zeus with goodness and justice, suggesting a symbolic overlap with the demiurge. Thus, Zeus is justice and order, the laws of destiny, rewarding righteousness, correcting evil, mirror Jupiter's mythological storms, now reimagined as enforcers of a rational cosmos. But Zeus-Jupiter is also the soul's elevation. Linking souls to stars connects Jupiter, the planet and god, to the journey of the soul. In Neoplatonism, this tension resolves further. Zeus becomes the intellectual principle, akin to the demiurge, blending myth and philosophy. A cosmic steward ensuring the vision of the demiurge reaches mortal lives. Conclusion. Jupiter is from a universe governed by reason, justice, and divine collaboration. The demiurge, as the ultimate artificer, crafts Zeus and the gods, entrusting them with mortals and the soul's moral path. Jupiter emerges as both participant and symbol, a god shaped by a higher will, yet a philosophical emblem of the order and justice that define Plato's cosmos. His storms, once capricious, now are rational design, urging us toward its first and better state. Quite witty, isn't it? Later, Neoplatonists like Plotinus and Proclus discussed Plato's views on Zeus and developed their own accounts. Having seen Plato transform Jupiter into a candle of justice and life, we now ascend to Plotinus, the Neoplatonist, who reimagines Zeus as a cosmic intellect in a universe pulsing with divine emanations. In Enneads 5, one on love, Plotinus elevates love to a celestial drama starring Zeus, Aphrodite, and Eros, where Jupiter becomes the intellectual principle, orchestrating beauty and order. Plotinus begins by wrestling with the nature of love itself, setting the stage for a deeper inquiry. What is love? A god, a celestial spirit, a state of mind? Or is it, perhaps sometimes to be thought of as a god or spirit, and sometimes merely as an experience? And what is it essentially in each of these respects? These important questions make it desirable to review prevailing opinions on the matter, the philosophical treatment it has received, and especially the theories of the great Plato, who has many passages dealing with love from a point of view entirely his own. This opening salvo signals Plotinus's intent. Love is a cosmic force with divine roots. He nods to Plato's Symposium, where Eros is born at Aphrodite's feast, but he's not content with myth alone. He seeks the essence behind the story, bridging Plato's moral framework to a metaphysical system where Zeus plays a starring role. Then Plotinus explicitly identifies Zeus with the divine mind, or intellectual principle, nous, distinguishing him from the soul represented by Aphrodite. But what are we to understand by this Zeus with the garden into which we are told poros or wealth entered? And what is the garden? We have seen that the Aphrodite of the myth is the soul, and that poros, wealth, is the reason principle of the universe. We have still to explain Zeus and his garden. We cannot take Zeus to be the soul, which we have agreed is represented by Aphrodite. Plato, who must be our guide in this question, speaks in the Phaedrus of this god Zeus as the great leader, though elsewhere he seems to rank him as one of three. But in the Philebus he speaks more plainly when he says that there is in Zeus not only a royal soul, but also a royal intellect. As a mighty intellect and soul, he must be a principle of cause. He must be the highest for several reasons, but especially because to be king and leader is to be the chief cause. Zeus, then, is the intellectual principle. Plotinus crowns Zeus as the intellectual principle, the second hypostasis in his Neoplatonic triad, the one intellect, nous, and soul, psyche. Unlike Plato's Zeus in the Republic, who enforces justice or the life-giving force of Cratylus, Plotinus's Zeus is the divine mind, unchanging, eternal, and the source of all rational order. The garden of Zeus is a metaphor for the radiant beauty of ideas, the eternal forms that emanate from his intellect. This Zeus thinks the cosmos into being. Plotinus then explores Eros, born from Aphrodite, soul, and tied to Zeus's domain, offering a vivid account of how love was born in the beginning. The matter seems to demand some discussion of Aphrodite, since in any case Eros is described as being either her son or in some association with her. The heavenly Aphrodite, daughter of Kronos, who is no other than the intellectual principle, must be the soul at its divinest, unmingled as the immediate emanation of the unmingled, remaining ever above, as neither desirous nor capable of descending to this sphere, never having developed the downward tendency, a divine hypostasis essentially aloof, so unreservedly an authentic being as to have no part with matter, and therefore mythically the unmothered, justly called not celestial spirit but God as knowing no admixture, gathered cleanly within itself. But following upon Kronos, or if you will, upon heaven, the father of Kronos, the soul directs its act towards him, and holds closely to him, and in that love brings forth the Eros, through whom it continues to look towards him. This act of the soul has produced an hypostasis, a real being, and the mother and this hypostasis, her offspring, noble love, gaze together upon divine mind. Aphrodite, as the pure soul, emanates from Zeus, intellect, and her act of love, gazing upward, births Eros, a divine hypostasis. Eros is the bridge between soul and intellect, the eye of the desirer that enables the soul to behold the beauty of Zeus's palaces. A celestial love affair positions Zeus as the object of eternal longing and his garden of ideas the ultimate prize. Plotinus transforms the mythological Eros into a philosophical mediator, born of the soul's aspiration toward the divine mind. Plotinus elaborates on this cosmic interplay, detailing the garden's significance. This poros, possession then, is the reason principle of all that exists in the intellectual realm and in the supreme intellect. But being more diffused, kneaded out as it were, it must touch soul, be in soul, as the next lower principle. A garden is a place of beauty and a glory of wealth. All the loveliness that Zeus maintains takes its splendor from the reason principle within him. For all this beauty is the radiation of the divine intellect upon the divine soul, which it has penetrated. What could the garden of Zeus indicate but the images of his being and the splendors of his glory? And what could these divine splendors and beauties be but the ideas streaming from him? Poros, or wealth, represents the reason principles, the ideas that flow from Zeus's intellect to the soul, Aphrodite. The garden is the luminous domain of divine forms, where beauty and truth reside. Zeus, as intellect, radiates ideas, saturating the soul with their splendor. This is Plotinus's Neoplatonic twist. Jupiter's sovereignty isn't physical but intellectual, a mind so potent it births the concepts that shape reality. Plotinus concludes by reflecting on Eros's role and nature, tying it back to Zeus. Love, born at the banquet of the gods, has of necessity been eternally in existence, for it springs from the intention of the soul towards its best, towards the good. As long as soul has been, love has been. Still, this love is of mixed quality. On the one hand, there is in it the lack which keeps it craving. On the other, it is not entirely destitute. The deficient seeks more of what it has, and certainly nothing absolutely void of good would ever go seeking the good. Eros, born at the divine feast, embodies the soul's eternal yearning for Zeus's intellectual beauty. He's a paradox like all other gods, craving yet not empty, driven by lack yet enriched by the vision of the good. This duality reflects Plotinus's system. The soul, though divine, is a step below intellect, forever reaching upward. Zeus, as the intellectual principle, remains the ultimate goal, his garden the source of all that Eros, and by extension humanity, seeks. Plotinus takes Plato's Jupiter, a god of justice and life, and elevates him into the Neoplatonic cosmos. Where Plato's Zeus enforces order and sustains existence, Plotinus's Zeus is the divine mind, the unchanging source of all rational beauty. Eros, born of Aphrodite's love for Zeus, becomes the dynamic link between soul and intellect, a celestial goad driving the universe toward its origin. The Garden of Zeus, drenched in the nectar of reason, symbolizes the eternal forms, ideas that dazzle the soul and inspire its ascent. This isn't the thunderous Jupiter of myth, but a philosophical titan whose power lies in thought rather than tempest. Plotinus's vision seduces us with its elegance. Jupiter as intellect and beating heart of the universe, radiating beauty that stirs every soul. This philosophical transformation of the thunder god into cosmic principle marks a crucial development in human thought. Jupiter evolves from tribal deity to universal concept, from the god of a particular people to the ordering intelligence of reality itself. Consider the linguistic evidence for this transformation. The Latin Jupiter combines deus, God, and pater, father, the divine paternal principle. But the Romans also called him Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Jupiter best and greatest, emphasizing his ethical and ontological supremacy beyond incredible power. The shift from power god to moral principle was already underway. The Stoics, whose influence on Roman thought cannot be overstated, identified Jupiter with the Logos, the divine reason that structures the cosmos. Cleanthes' hymn to Zeus, perhaps the finest religious poem of Stoicism, captures this philosophical elevation. Most glorious of the immortals, invoked by many names, ever all-powerful, Zeus, the first cause of nature, who rules all things with law, hail. It is right for mortals to call upon you. Here, Jupiter is law incarnate and universal principle again, but one that retains the personal attributes that make relation possible. Another Jovian paradox, the universal is expressed through the particular. However, this philosophical Jupiter operates through what the Greeks called phronesis, practical wisdom, rather than sophia, abstract knowledge. He represents intelligence engaged with actual circumstances rather than retreating into pure theory, the embodied wisdom of experience rather than the disembodied wisdom of speculation. This practical orientation appears even in Jupiter's astrological associations. Traditional astrology assigns Jupiter rulership over the ninth house of higher learning, long journeys, and religious understanding, knowledge acquired through experience and engagement with the world. Jupiter is consciousness expansion. This philosophical principle appears in Jupiter's physical reality as well. The gas giant's enormous gravity both gathers material to itself and flings other material into far-flung orbits. It simultaneously concentrates and disperses, centers and expands, the perfect celestial embodiment of the philosophical principle it represents. Consider Jupiter's role in our solar system's formation. Recent astrophysical models suggest Jupiter may have migrated inward toward the Sun early in solar system history, then outward again, a cosmic dance that both disrupted the inner solar system and ultimately stabilized it. Chaos that creates order, disruption that enables stability, pure Jovian principle translated into astronomical dynamics. The Hermetic tradition recognized this balance in its famous dictum, "as above, so below," a principle that Jupiter exemplifies through his simultaneous transcendence and immanence, the highest god who concerns himself with human affairs, the cosmic principle that manifests in earthly particulars, the universal that expresses itself through the specific. In Kabbalistic thought, Jupiter corresponds to Chest, the sephira of mercy and expansion on the tree of life. It represents the outpouring of divine energy before the limiting principle of Geburah, severity, gives it form. Yet Chesed itself is already a limitation of the infinite light of Ein Sof, an expansion that is already a form of contraction. Another Jovian paradox: growth through limitation. As we prepare to light up Jupiter's psychological dimensions, let's recapitulate what we've seen so far. From Plato's steadfast guardian of justice to Plotinus's radiant intellect, Jupiter's philosophical journey unveils a deity who transcends the roar of thunder to whisper truths of order and beauty. Plato hands us a Jupiter cleansed of caprice, a life-giving force whose every bolt strikes for the good, while Plotinus crowns him the divine mind, his garden a realm of ideas that elevates the soul higher through Eros's tender gaze. Together, they transform a god of storms into a maestro, conducting a symphony where justice, reason, and love harmonize in the vast music of the spheres. This evolution, from mythic king to universal principle, mirrors our own ascent, a reaching beyond the tribal hearth to the starlit expanse. To touch logos and reason and be transformed by it. To let wisdom bloom from the soil of experience. The psychological dimension of Jupiter reveals perhaps its most profound and immediate relevance to our lives. While we may not consciously worship sky gods or track celestial bodies, we all experience the Jovian principle through our relationship with authority, order, and expansion. Jung, whose work often bridged ancient symbolism with modern psychology, recognized this archetypal power operating within the human psyche. The wise old man, the superior master and teacher, the archetype of the spirit, who symbolizes the pre-existent meaning hidden in the chaos of life. He is the father of the soul. This way, the wise old man archetype perfectly mirrors Jupiter's mythological and astronomical role as the force that brings meaning to chaos. Just as Jupiter's gravity organizes our solar system, this psychological aspect organizes our inner cosmos. But Jung went further, exploring how this manifests in our relationship with external authority and spiritual guidance. It struck me that a certain kind of father complex has a spiritual character, so to speak, in the sense that the father image gives rise to statements, actions, tendencies, impulses, opinions, etc., to which one could hardly deny the attribute spiritual. In men, a positive father complex very often produces a certain credulity with regard to authority, and a distinct willingness to bow down before all spiritual dogmas and values. While in women, it induces the liveliest spiritual aspirations and interests. In dreams, it is always the father figure from whom the decisive convictions, prohibitions, and wise counsels emanate. The invisibility of this source is frequently emphasized by the fact that it consists simply of an authoritative voice which passes final judgments. Mostly, therefore, it is the figure of a wise old man who symbolizes the spiritual factor. Sometimes the part is played by a real spirit, namely the ghost of one dead, or more rarely, by grotesque gnome-like figures or talking animals. These observations from Jung's The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious bring us to Jupiter's psychological dimension, and perhaps its most relevant manifestation for contemporary understanding. Where ancient peoples projected this ordering principle onto the heavens and their pantheons, we now recognize it operating within our own psyches, souls, or minds. Call it however you prefer, or all of them at once. Regardless, the Jovian archetype may be found in a distant planet and an ancient god, but it is primarily, and most importantly, a living psychological force that governs how we relate to power, meaning, and growth. And psychological realities are oftentimes more real than reality itself, given the a priori mental work before every material manifestation. What Jung intuited And what we can explore further is how this archetypal pattern operates not just individually but collectively, organizing our relationship with authority and the structures of our beloved civilization. The psychological Jupiter is both an internal compass and an external framework, the principle that helps us move swiftly between chaos and rigid order. What's also noteworthy is that according to Jungian psychology, Jupiter may be identified with what Jung called the mana personality, the aspect of the psyche that embodies authority, benevolence, and expansive wisdom. Unlike the Saturnian archetype, with its emphasis on limitation and structure, the Jovian archetype represents psychological growth, integration, and the balanced expression of power. Joseph Campbell, in The Hero with a Thousand Faces, penetrates even deeper into what lies behind these archetypal forms. The gods and goddesses, then, are to be understood as embodiments and custodians of the elixir of imperishable being, but not themselves the ultimate in its primary state. What the hero seeks through his intercourse with them is therefore not finally themselves, but their grace, which is the power of their sustaining substance. This miraculous energy substance, and this alone, is the imperishable, the names and forms of the deities who everywhere embody, dispense, and represent it come and go. This is the miraculous energy of the thunderbolts of Zeus, Yahweh, and the Supreme Buddha, the fertility of the reign of Viracocha, the virtue announced by the bell rung in the Mass at the consecration, and the light of the ultimate illumination of the saint and sage. Its guardians dare release it only to the duly proven. Campbell reveals something profound about Jupiter's psychological function. The thunderbolt represents access to a miraculous energy substance that transcends the deity himself. This suggests that what we experience as the Jovian principle in our psyche isn't merely an archetypal pattern, but a gateway to something more fundamental. Perhaps what Jung would call the self, or close to that, or what Campbell terms imperishable being. Our relationship with Jupiter's energy is therefore not about submission to authority, but accessing the transformative power that authority protects and dispenses. Consider Jung's own words from Mysterium Conjunctionis. The self, in its effort at self-realization, reaches far beyond the ego personality on all sides. Because of its all-encompassing nature, it is brighter and darker than the ego, and accordingly confronts it with problems which it would like to avoid. This all-encompassing nature is quintessentially Jovian. Jupiter is an expansive principle that includes and integrates opposites rather than dividing and eliminating. Jupiter psychologically represents what we might call generative authority, a power that enables growth rather than asking you for your obedience. Remember that Prometheus survived with his liver fully regenerated because Zeus allowed it to be so. Unlike authoritarian power, Saturn in its shadow aspect, Jovian authority functions through inspiration, through opening possibilities rather than closing them, through giving tests like God did with Job in the Book of Job. Jung also writes in Ion, researches into the phenomenology of the self, that, according to medieval tradition, the religion of the Jews originated in a conjunction of Jupiter with Saturn, Islam in Jupiter-Mercury, Christianity in Jupiter-Venus, and the Antichrist in Jupiter-Moon. Unlike Saturn, Jupiter is a beneficent star. In the Iranian view, Jupiter signifies life, Saturn death. This quote is under a discussion of religious symbolism associated with astrological conjunctions. In the broader context of this section, Jung is discussing the astrological symbolism associated with different religious traditions, particularly focusing on how celestial conjunctions were believed to correspond to the emergence of major world religions. He explores how these planetary relationships were understood to influence the psychological and spiritual character of the religious systems that emerged under their influence. However, the previously mentioned quote reveals how medieval astrology interpreted the origins of major religions through Jupiter's conjunctions with different planets. The conjunction of Jupiter, expansion authority, with Saturn, limitation, tradition, was believed to produce Judaism, a religion balancing divine law with covenant freedom. Jupiter-Mercury, communication transmission, birthed Islam, reflecting its emphasis on revealed scripture and prophetic messaging. Jupiter-Venus, love harmony, generated Christianity, symbolizing grace and divine love over strict law. The ominous Jupiter moon, reflection unconscious conjunction, was associated with the Antichrist, representing distorted or inverted divine authority. Jung notes that Jupiter's beneficent nature contrasted with Saturn's association with death in Iranian tradition, highlighting the fundamental psychological opposition between expansive life energy and restrictive limitation. However, the opposites need to be integrated or know to expect a reaction if one of them gets too neglected. However, Jupiter has primacy. It is clear because he is the god that can't miss from major conjunctions. Yet he is considered beneficent. We see this dynamic clearly in Jupiter's mythological relationships with other gods. He delegates authority rather than hoarding it. Neptune receives the sea, Pluto, the underworld, Apollo, prophecy, Mercury, communication. Unlike Kronos, who kept all power for himself, Jupiter distributes it. The psychological principle of mature authority empowers others rather than diminishing them. This distributive quality reflects Jupiter's most essential psychological function, expansion through relation. Where Saturn represents the principle of definition through separation, Jupiter represents definition through connection, understanding oneself by engaging with others rather than withdrawing from them. There's a subtle truth that needs to be told about the ego, especially to those who think ego is the enemy. The ego is not the enemy. The problem is that the ego can get inflated. Sometimes it thinks it can control everything, know everything, and do everything by himself. But then it tends to isolate you and become your mental prison, disconnected from the world. However, a better alternative, the Jovian ego, recognizes itself as a part of a larger whole. It recognizes the diversity and that unity needs to be all-encompassing. Jupiter's psychological wisdom lies in the recognition of interconnection. The understanding that true growth comes through relationships and links and connections and fusions and partnerships rather than isolation. That is a false oneness. Jung discusses the concept of identification with the archetype, when the ego believes itself to be the self, when the limited personality attempts to embody unlimited potential, the manager who thinks he's a king, the teacher who demands worship rather than respect, the parent who lives through their child rather than for them. But then, Marcus Aurelius writes in his beautiful Meditations, "For there is altogether one harmony. And as the universe is made up out of all bodies to be such a body as it is, so out of all existing causes, destiny is made up to be such a cause as it is. Let us then receive these things, as well as those which Aesculapius prescribes. Many, as a matter of course, even among his prescriptions are disagreeable, but we accept them in the hope of health. Let the perfecting and accomplishment of the things which the common nature judges to be good, be judged by thee to be of the same kind as your health. And so accept everything which happens, even if it seem disagreeable, because it leads to this, to the health of the universe and to the prosperity and felicity of Zeus. For he would not have brought on any man what he has brought, if it were not useful for the whole. Neither does the nature of anything, whatever it may be, cause anything that is not suitable to that which is directed by it. For two reasons, then, it is right to be content with that which happens to you. The one, because it was done for you and prescribed for you, and in a manner had reference to thee, originally from the most ancient causes spun with thy destiny. And the other, because even that which comes severally to every man is to the power which administers the universe a cause of felicity and perfection, nay, even of its very continuance. For the integrity of the whole is mutilated if you cut off anything whatever, from the conjunction and the continuity, either of the parts or the causes." This passage paints how the highest Stoic of all time understood Jupiter, Zeus, the embodiment of cosmic order, necessity, and even destiny. From a psychological perspective, what Marcus Aurelius presents is essentially a framework for relating to Jupiter's energy as an internalized principle of cosmic harmony and unity. The Emperor Philosopher suggests that everything that happens, even events we find disagreeable, serves the prosperity and felicity of Zeus, or the ordered universe. Thus, Jupiter's psychological function is the integrating principle that transforms seeming chaos into meaningful order. Where Jung saw Jupiter's conjunctions creating religious frameworks, Aurelius offers a practical philosophy for living within Jupiter's domain of necessity or destiny. Psychologically, Aurelius is addressing how consciousness can accommodate itself to Jupiter's authority without resistance. He compares accepting fate to accepting medical prescriptions from Aesculapius. They may be bitter, but they serve health. This is Jupiter functioning as the wise physician of the soul, whose seemingly harsh remedies serve a higher purpose beyond our immediate comfort. Most striking is Aurelius's insight that the integrity of the whole is mutilated. If you cut off anything whatever from the conjunction and the continuity either of the parts or the causes, Jupiter is still the integrative force that maintains wholeness. When we reject aspects of experience as not belonging, we fragment consciousness itself. Never forget that. This Stoic perspective reveals Jupiter not merely as external authority but as the principle of internal coherence, what Jung might call the self-archetype, which organizes psychic elements into meaningful relationships. By accepting that which is prescribed and seeing it as suitable to that which is directed, the psyche aligns its individual authority, the conscious ego, with transpersonal authority, the organizing principle of the cosmos. But this should not be taken with fatalism. Aurelius isn't counseling passive submission but becoming a player in the cosmic order. Jupiter's energy transforms the apparent randomness of experience into what Aurelius calls the health of the universe. This perspective complements Jung's astrological observations by showing how Jupiter's principle manifests not just in religious systems but in philosophical approaches to living, offering a psychological framework for finding meaning in necessity and purpose in constraint. And isn't it lovely when you hear Marcus talk about conjunctions, even if it might just be a translation coincidence? Anyway, in simpler words, Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "That which is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee." Remember, individual flourishing depends on collective flourishing. Jove, Jupiter, or Zeus, and those that integrate this archetype grow by involving all of us. Jupiter represents the principle of expansive integration, of authority that enables, of growth through connection. The psychological Jupiter is not the tyrant who commands from above, but the guide who walks alongside. None other than the empowering presence that helps us become more fully ourselves. Within the psyche, Jupiter weaves a subtle strength. Jung's wise old man lends order to our chaos. Campbell's thunderbolt kindles a vital spark, and Aurelius ties our fates to the universe's quiet harmony, bee and hive thriving as one. This archetype connects us, turning turmoil into growth with a wisdom that inspires rather than commands. Here Jupiter stands as a steady guide, threading our scattered selves into a grand intermix of meaning. You are the first and almost the only person who, even after but a cursory investigation, has, such is your openness of mind and lofty genius, given entire credit to my statements. We will not trouble ourselves about the abuse of the multitude, for against Jupiter, even giants, to say nothing of pygmies, fight in vain. Let Jupiter stand in the heavens, and let the sycophants bark at him as they will. So wrote Galileo Galilei to Johannes Kepler in 1610, describing the resistance he faced after discovering Jupiter's moons. He continued, "In Pisa, Florence, Bologna, Venice and Padua, many have seen the planets, but all are silent on the subject and undecided. For the greater number recognize neither Jupiter nor Mars, and scarcely the moon as planet. What is to be done? Shall we side with Democritus or Heraclitus? I think, my Kepler, we will laugh at the extraordinary stupidity of the multitude. What do you say to the leading philosophers of the faculty here, to whom I have offered 1,000 times of my own accord, to show my studies, but who with the lazy obstinacy of a serpent who has eaten his fill, have never consented to look at planets, nor moon, nor telescope?" This extraordinary letter captures a pivotal moment in the human understanding of Jupiter. The giant planet, once merely a wandering light in the night sky, had suddenly revealed itself as a miniature solar system, a world with its own celestial court. The philosophers who refused to look through Galileo's telescope feared what Jupiter might reveal. Not just new moons, but a new cosmology that threatened centuries of established thought. In Jupiter's astronomical properties, we find perfect manifestations of the philosophical and psychological principles we've been exploring. The planet itself becomes a vast cosmic symbol, its material characteristics embodying metaphysical truths. Jupiter is a gas giant, a world utterly unlike our solid Earth. No surface exists to stand upon, only ever-increasing density as one descends through its atmospheric layers. It is a planet defined by process rather than structure, by dynamic flow rather than static form. Its physical nature perfectly embodies its symbolic nature, boundless energy contained within loose boundaries. Consider Jupiter's most striking visual feature, the banded appearance created by powerful east-west jet streams. These alternating dark belts and light zones represent different atmospheric heights and compositions, boundaries that are perpetually in flux, constantly reforming rather than being rigidly fixed. The perfect astronomical embodiment of flexible authority rather than brittle tyranny. The Great Red Spot exemplifies this dynamic structure, a vast anticyclonic storm 3 times larger than Earth that has persisted for at least 400 years, possibly much longer, as we mentioned earlier in this video. Recent observations confirm it's growing taller as it shrinks in width, extending higher into Jupiter's upper atmosphere while becoming more concentrated. What better astronomical manifestation of Jupiter's psychological principle could we ask for? A storm that endures precisely because it changes, that maintains identity through transformation rather than rigid consistency. The red spot is perpetually dying and being reborn, shedding fragments that form new storms while absorbing others, embodying the paradox of continuity through change that defines Jovian wisdom. And Jupiter is full of storms. Jupiter's composition tells us something equally profound. It consists primarily of hydrogen and helium, similar to the Sun. The first elements, the primordial substance of the cosmos. Yet, through tremendous pressure, this simplest matter transforms into exotic states unlike anything found on Earth. At Jupiter's core, hydrogen becomes metallic, conducting electricity like a cosmic dynamo. The most basic element becomes something extraordinary through pure magnitude, quantity transforming into quality. This process generates Jupiter's most invisible but far-reaching feature, its magnetosphere. As you already know, it extends up to 100 times Jupiter's radius, on the side facing away from the Sun. This magnetic bubble is the largest structure in the solar system after the heliosphere. It protects Jupiter's moons from solar radiation, while simultaneously bathing them in its energetic particles. The perfect astronomical embodiment of generative authority, power that both shields and energizes, that both protects and stimulates. Jupiter's relationship with its moons further demonstrates its symbolic nature. Unlike Saturn, with its magnificent but uninhabitable rings, Jupiter hosts an entire system of worlds. The 4 Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, each represent a distinct possibility of existence: volcanic chaos, subsurface ocean, magnetic stability, and cratered memory. Together they form what astronomers call the Jovian system, a perfect microcosm of cosmic diversity unified by a central organizing principle. This astronomical arrangement mirrors Jupiter's mythic and psychological roles precisely. The sovereign that unifies diversity without eliminating it, the center that creates coherence while enabling difference, the presence that organizes without homogenizing. Consider how Jupiter's enormous mass has shaped our entire solar system. Its gravitational influence cleared the asteroid belt, protected Earth from excessive bombardment, and stabilized the orbits of other planets. The astronomical Jupiter organizes our solar system together with the Sun and the other planets, bringing order to chaos not through elimination but through integration. It also has been called the vacuum cleaner of the solar system. Jupiter's enormous gravitational influence has profoundly shaped the asteroid belt. Its presence created what astronomers call Kirkwood gaps, which are regions in the belt where asteroids are notably absent due to orbital resonances with Jupiter. Simultaneously, Jupiter helps stabilize other regions where asteroids cluster in what can be described as Jovian resonance zones. The gas giant's influence extends to the Trojan asteroids, two large groups that share Jupiter's orbit, positioned 60 degrees ahead and behind the planet at Jupiter's L4 and L5 Lagrangian points. These Trojans, numbering over 9,000 known objects, represent a remarkable example of how Jupiter's gravity can capture and organize material into stable configurations, demonstrating its role as both disruptor and stabilizer in our solar system. This astronomical reality reflects Jupiter's psychological and philosophical dimensions with uncanny precision, the organizing power that doesn't suppress chaos but temporarily harmonizes it. The authority that doesn't eliminate disorder, but integrates it into higher order. The presence that brings form to formlessness without destroying its essential nature. Jupiter's orbit tells us something equally profound. At 11.86 Earth years, it marks a significant human time frame, the transition from childhood to adolescence. This astronomical cycle has been recognized since ancient times, with many cultures marking the first Jupiter return around age 12 as the threshold of adult responsibility. The planet's very movement through space demarcates a crucial psychological transition, from being purely subject to authority to beginning to embody it. Even Jupiter's axial tilt contains symbolic meaning. At just 3.13 degrees, it experiences minimal seasonal variation. Unlike Earth with its 23.5-degree tilt, or Uranus, which rotates nearly on its side. The astronomical Jupiter maintains remarkable consistency throughout its orbit, embodying the philosophical principle of reliable authority rather than erratic power. Yet, despite this minimal tilt, Jupiter rotates faster than any other planet in our solar system, completing a day in just under 10 hours. This rapid spin generates its powerful magnetic field and contributes to its banded appearance. Here again we find perfect symbolic correspondence. The planet that represents expansive authority also embodies rapid movement. Power is expressed through dynamism rather than stasis. In 1994, astronomers witnessed something extraordinary. The comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, having been captured and fragmented by Jupiter's gravity during a previous approach, collided with the giant planet in a series of spectacular impacts. The astronomical Jupiter demonstrated its dual nature as both destroyer and protector, absorbing a threat that, had it been directed toward Earth, would have caused mass extinction. This astronomical event illustrates Jupiter's mythic and psychological role with remarkable clarity. The protective father, who shields his children by absorbing threats himself. The sovereign power whose very magnitude serves as both attractor and defender. The cosmic principle that transforms destruction into renewal through sheer scale of being. Last but not least, recent observations from NASA's Juno mission have revealed something equally profound about Jupiter's interior structure. Rather than having a distinct core as previously thought, Jupiter appears to have a diluted core, a gradual transition from metallic hydrogen to denser materials. The boundary between the core and surrounding layers is diffuse rather than sharp. The perfect astronomical embodiment of authority that persuades rather than commands, that influences through presence rather than dictate. So in conclusion, it seems that Jupiter's astronomical reality embodies its symbolic significance. The physical Jupiter, far from being a simple object of scientific study, reveals itself as the material manifestation of a principle that operates simultaneously through mythology, psychology, philosophy, and physics. The cosmos itself has given form to an archetype, has embodied a concept through the precise properties of a planet whose every characteristic reflects its symbolic meaning. Now let's see what the precursor of astronomy, astrology, has to reveal. Jupiter's celestial reign shines brightly in the astrological cosmos, where ancient minds like Claudius Ptolemy, a 2nd century Greco-Roman polymath, charted its influence with precision and wonder. In his seminal work, Tetrabiblos, Ptolemy unveils a principle, a cosmic force of warmth, growth and order that has guided human imagination for centuries. Forget the muddle of later astrologers for now. Let's dive straight into Ptolemy's own words, a treasure trove of insight from the ancient world, and see how he paints Jupiter as the sky's great benefactor. Here's what he says, straight from the scroll, followed by a romp through what it all means. Ptolemy starts by describing how Jupiter exerts a temperate influence between extremes. In his own words, Jupiter revolves in an intermediate sphere between the extreme cold of Saturn and the burning heat of Mars, and has consequently a temperate influence. He therefore at once promotes both warmth and moisture. But owing to the spheres of Mars and the Sun, which lie beneath him, his warmth is predominant, and hence he produces fertilizing breezes. Thus, Jupiter's cosmic real estate is sandwiched between chilly Saturn and fiery Mars. This is a recipe for balance. Jupiter's temperate influence blends warmth and moisture, life's essentials, but leans hotter thanks to its rowdy neighbors below. And think of those fertilizing breezes as Jupiter's breath, stirring the air with vitality, a nod to his role as a life-giver, not unlike the thunder god's reign in earlier sections. Then, Ptolemy paints Jupiter's role as the greater benefic. Therefore, two of the planets, on account of their temperate quality, and because heat and moisture are predominant in them, are considered by the ancients as benefic, or causes of good. These are Jupiter and Venus, and the Moon also is so considered for the same reasons. Jupiter is the ruler in the benefic club alongside Venus and the Moon, all sharing that sweet spot of heat and moisture. Ptolemy's ancients, likely nodding to Hellenistic traditions, saw this trio as the good guys, countering the malefic sting of Mars and Saturn, and their beneficence fostered life, a theme that echoes Plato's author of life from Cratylus. Jupiter's here to bless, not curse. Jupiter is a daytime entity, bright, bold, and yang to the Moon's yin. Masculine ties to action and outward energy, diurnal to the Sun's domain, amplifying his visibility and vigor. It's a quick sketch, but it sets Jupiter apart as a dynamic force ready to strut across the daylight sky. Ptolemy also writes that Jupiter has a favorable temperament and is situated beneath the sphere of Saturn. He, therefore, occupies the next two signs, Sagittarius and Pisces. These signs are airy and fruitful, in consequence of their trinal distance from the houses of the luminaries, which distance harmonizes with the operation of good. Thus, Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, signs below Saturn's Capricorn and Aquarius. Airy and fruitful hints at their trinal aspect. 120 degrees from the Sun's Leo and Moon's Cancer, deemed harmonious and lucky. Sagittarius shoots for wisdom, Pisces swims in empathy, and Jupiter's favorable temperament fuels both, tying back to his benefic nature. It's cosmic geometry with a purpose. Jupiter is, of course, the first one to be fruitful and airy. He's also expressly connected with winds proceeding from the north. Jupiter's got a breezy side, thus linked to northern winds. Its cool and fertile gusts contrast Mars's hot blasts. These ideas reinforce his life-giving energy, a celestial fan stirring growth, much like the ever-present psychological Jupiter's integrative push. It's noteworthy that Cancer is Jupiter's sweet spot, his exaltation, where he's at peak power, blowing those northern breezes and hitting his northernmost stride. Capricorn, Saturn's turf, is his low point, a fall from grace. It's a cosmic tug-of-war, with Jupiter thriving in nurturing Cancer, amplifying his beneficence. But in the airy triplicity, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, Jupiter leads the pack, grabbing the first degrees. This rulership over a trio of signs underscores his authority, a celestial boss doling out favor, a practical echo of his philosophical mediation between extremes. Jupiter's influence on people under the northeastern triplicity blends with Saturn and Mercury, but it's his touch that sparks love of freedom, self-rule, and skill in guiding public affairs and in legislation. This is where astrology meets anthropology. Jupiter is a shaper of character, not just skies. He infuses inhabitants with civic duty. Ptolemy also discusses how Jupiter influences certain specific countries. The people of Arabia Felix are connected with Sagittarius and Jupiter. The country is fertile and abundantly productive of spices, and its inhabitants are well proportioned in person, free in all their habits of life, and liberal in all their contracts and dealings. Thus, modern Yemen gets Jupiter's Sagittarian blessing, fertility, spices, and a free-spirited folk. A snapshot of how Ptolemy maps geography to stars, with Jupiter's expansive hand crafting a prosperous land and people. But here's the full flourish. Jupiter and the Sun rule Arabia. Felix showering it with wealth, virtue, and flair. The matutine, morning positions, rising before the Sun, boost Jupiter's and Saturn's energies, modeling people to be noble yet luxurious, a living testament to Jupiter's beneficence. Or in Ptolemy's words, the inhabitants worship Jupiter and the Sun. They are abundantly rich in all things. They possess much gold and are dainty and luxurious in their diet. They are also learned in theology, skilled in magic, just in all their dealings, free and noble-minded, holding dishonesty and wickedness in abhorrence, strongly imbued with the softer affections of nature, and in a worthy cause they will even readily embrace death to preserve their friends. They are, furthermore, chaste in marriage, elegant and splendid in their dress, charitable and beneficent, and of enlightened intellect. How lovely Ptolemy! Likewise, the Anatolian regions, Lydia, Cilicia, and Pamphylia, tied to Pisces and Jupiter, thrive with wealth and integrity. Jupiter's Piscean softness here fosters community and trust, a quieter echo of his expansive reach. Hence, their inhabitants are wealthy, of mercantile habits, living in freedom and in community, faithful to their engagements and honest in their dealings. The North African tribes of Phazania, Nasamanitus, and Garamantica are also under Pisces and Jupiter. The inhabitants are frank and simple in manners, fond of employment, well-disposed, fond of the decencies of life, and for the most part free and unrestrained in their actions, worshipping Jupiter as Ammon, a nod to Egyptian syncretism. Jupiter's influence here is freedom with decency, a practical piety. The sprawling region of northeast Africa falls under the airy triplicity, with Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury steering a wild mix of traits: piety, polygamy, bravery, and licentiousness. Jupiter's role here tempers Saturn's harshness, fostering reverence amid diversity. In Ptolemy's more impressive words, their inhabitants therefore participate in the influence of all the 5 planets in vespertine figuration and consequently cherish due love and reverence for the gods, and dedicate themselves to their service. They are addicted to sepulchral ceremonies, and owing to the said vespertine position, they bury their dead in the earth and remove them from the public eye. They use various laws and customs and worship diverse gods. In a state of subjection they are submissive, cowardly, abject, and most patient. But when they command, they are brave, generous, and high-minded. Polygamy is frequent among them, and practiced by the women as well as the men. They are most licentious in sexual intercourse and allow incestuous commerce between brothers and sisters. Both men and women are extraordinarily prolific and correspond in this respect with the fecundity of their soil. Many of the men are, however, effeminate and debased in mind, in consequence of the figuration of the malefics, together with the vespertine position of Venus, and some of them mutilate their persons. A quick note: Jupiter pauses in its orbit, appearing stationary from Earth, a trait shared with other planets. It's a technical aside, but it underscores his rhythmic presence. That's why Ptolemy states that Jupiter is stationary, alongside Saturn and Mars. Then Ptolemy writes a very important passage about Jupiter's domination and prosperity when he is ruling on his own. Jupiter, if he should be lord alone, will thoroughly improve and benefit all things. Among mankind in particular, this planet promotes honor, happiness, content, and peace by augmenting all the necessaries and comforts of life and all mental and bodily advantages. It also induces favors, benefits, and gifts emanating from royalty, and adds greater luster to kings themselves, increasing their dignity and magnanimity. All men, in short, will share in the prosperity created by its influence. With regard to the operation of the event on brutes, those which are domestic and adapted to man's service will be multiplied and will thrive, while others which are useless and hostile to man will be destroyed. The constitution of the atmosphere will be healthy and temperate, filled with gentle breezes and moisture, and favorable to fruits. Navigation will be safe and successful. Rivers will rise to their just proportion. Fruit and grain, and all other productions of the earth conducive to the welfare and happiness of mankind, will be presented in abundance. Wow. When Jupiter rules solo, it's a true golden age, not the Saturnian version. Jupiter brings honor, peace, thriving livestock, and bountiful harvests, among other blessings. His gentle breezes and moisture echo earlier quotes. A cosmic king showering prosperity on man and beast alike. Ptolemy also wrote about eclipse colors and Jupiter's hue. White hues in an eclipse? That's Jupiter's signature, a subtle nod to his bright, beneficent light, a cosmic weather report for ancient seers. Then, when discussing physical appearance, our beloved astrologer notes that Jupiter ruling, when oriental, makes the person white or fair, with a clear complexion, moderate growth of hair and large eyes, and of good and dignified stature, the temperament being chiefly of heat and moisture. When occidental, he still causes a fair complexion, but not of equal clearness. And he produces long, straight hair, with baldness on the forehead or on the crown of the head. And he then also gives a middle stature to the body, with a temperament of more moisture. In short, Jupiter's oriental or rising phase crafts a fair, big-eyed figure. Jupiter's occidental or setting phase produces a bolder, moister one. It's astrology's physiognomy, linking sky to skin with heat and moisture as the sculptor. As a side note, Ptolemy also compares Jupiter to Venus several times. In one instance, he tells us that Venus operates in a manner similar to that of Jupiter, but at the same time more becomingly and more gracefully. Venus acts like Jupiter's prettier cousin, a similar beneficence, but with extra charm. And then, we also find that Jupiter governs the hand, the lungs, the arteries, and the seed. This means Jupiter rules key body parts: hands for action, lungs for breath, arteries for lifeblood, and seed for generation. It's a corporeal echo of his vitality we've encountered over and over again in this exploration, isn't it? But then, Jupiter's healing function, especially when combined with the presence of Mercury, is described by Ptolemy thus. Jupiter, for instance, by means of human aid, such as wealth or rank can command, will conceal and soothe hurts and diseases. And if Mercury be joined with him, the assistance will be further improved by the addition of skillful physicians and good medicine. It seems that Jupiter heals through status. Think royal physicians. Remember that Jupiter's beneficence is often practical. Fortunately, Mercury can help him by adding brainy doctors too. However, among the many threads Ptolemy weaves, one passage stands as a luminous pinnacle, a radiant exposition of Jupiter's dominion over the human mind, a testament to its capacity to elevate or falter, to harmonize or fracture. Found in Book 3, Chapter 13, this excerpt isn't simply a list of traits, but a cosmic mirror reflecting the grandeur and frailty of our nature, a revelation of how Jupiter's light shapes the psyche through its glory or its shadow, alone or in concert with Mars, Venus, and Mercury. Let us first present this passage whole, uninterrupted, as a sacred text demands, then delve into its depths to uncover the greater patterns and meanings it unveils. When Jupiter alone has dominion of the mind and is gloriously situated, he renders it generous, gracious, pious, reverent, joyous, courteous, lofty, liberal, just, magnanimous, noble, self-acting, compassionate, fond of learning, beneficent, benevolent, and calculated for government. And if posited ingloriously, he will endow the mind with qualities apparently similar to these, but not of such virtue and lustre, as instead of generosity, he will then cause profusion. Instead of piety, bigotry, for modesty, timidity, for nobleness, arrogance, for courteousness, folly, for elegance, voluptuousness, for magnanimity, carelessness, and for liberality, indifference. Conciliated with Mars and being in glory, Jupiter will make men rough, warlike, skillful in military affairs, dictatorial, refractory, impetuous, daring, free in speech, able in action, fond of disputation, contentious, imperious, generous, ambitious, irascible, judicious and fortunate. But if thus connected and not placed in glory, he makes men mischievous, reckless, cruel, pitiless, seditious, quarrelsome, perverse, calumnious, arrogant, avaricious, capacious, inconstant, vain and empty, unsteady, precipitate, faithless, injudicious, inconsiderate, senseless, and officious. inculpators, prodigals, triflers, altogether without conduct and giving way to every impulse. When conciliated with Venus and in a glorious position, Jupiter will render the mind pure, joyous, delighting in elegance, in the arts and sciences, and in poetry and music, valuable in friendship, sincere, beneficent, compassionate, inoffensive, religious, fond of sports and exercises, prudent, amiable and affectionate, gracious, noble, brilliant, candid, liberal, discreet, temperate, modest, pious, just, fond of glory, and in all respects honourable and worthy. But if posited ingloriously when so connected, he makes men luxurious, soft, effeminate, fond of dancing, indulgent in expenses, incapable of managing women, yet amorous and lascivious, mean, slanderous, adulterous, fond of dress, dissolute, dull, wasteful, without energy, enervated, fond of personal adornment, womanish in mind, yet observant of holy rites and ceremonies, faithful, harmless, pleasant, affable, cheerful and liberal to misfortune. If connected with Mercury and posited in glory, Jupiter will render men fit for much business, fond of learning and of geometry and the mathematics, poetical, public orators, acute, temperate, well-disposed, skillful in counsel, politic, beneficent, able in government, pious, religious, valuable in all useful professions, benevolent, affectionate in their families, ready in acquiring knowledge, philosophical and dignified. But when so connected and placed ingloriously, he will produce contrary effects, rendering men frivolous, empty, contemptible, credulous of falsehood, senseless, fanatical, trifling, petulant, affectors of wisdom, stupid, arrogant, pretenders in art, magicians and vacillating. Yet he will also produce men skilled in various learning, and of strong memory, capable of imparting instruction and pure in their enjoyments. End of quote. So what does this passage tell us? First, it paints a celestial symphony, a profound meditation on Jupiter's power to shape the human mind. Here, Jupiter stands as a sovereign architect, his influence a dual-edged blade that carves virtue or vice depending on his celestial stance, glorious or inglorious, solitary or entwined with Mars, Venus or Mercury. It is a map of the soul's potential, a mirror to the greater meanings that thread through our exploration of Jupiter as thunder god, philosophical ideal, and psychological guide. Let's peel back its layers, tracing the grand designs it unveils with the attentiveness it deserves. At its core, this passage unveils Jupiter as the mind's great ennobler, a force that, when gloriously situated, strong in a natal chart, perhaps in exaltation, Cancer, or dignity, Sagittarius, Pisces, lifts the spirit to celestial heights. Generous, gracious, pious, reverent, joyous. These are the hallmarks of a soul aligned with cosmic good, echoing Plato's Zeus in the Republic, who is the cause of a few things only, and not of most things that occur to men, the source of justice and order. Lofty, liberal, just, magnanimous. Here's the thunder god's magnanimity from the thunder god we initially discovered. Tempered not by lightning but by reason. A ruler fit for government. A mind calculated to lead with benevolence. This is Jupiter at his zenith, a model of eudaimonia, flourishing as Ptolemy elsewhere ties to glory, reverence, abundance, a state where the psyche mirrors the harmony of the spheres. Yet the passage's genius lies in its shadow dance, when ingloriously posited, weak, perhaps in fall, Capricorn or afflicted. Jupiter's light dims and virtues twist into vices. Instead of generosity, profusion; instead of piety, bigotry. It's a revelation of human frailty, a cosmic caution that even the beneficent king can falter. The shift from magnanimity to carelessness, from liberality to indifference, mirrors the psychological Jupiter's warning in our narrative. The inflated ego, unchecked, becomes a mental prison. It's a paradox akin to the thunder god's own, liberator turned tyrant, as with Prometheus's punishment, showing that Jupiter's gifts, without balance, tip into excess, a pattern etched in the stars and the soul. Enter Mars, and the symphony shifts to a martial cadence. Conciliated with Mars and being in glory, Jupiter births a mind warlike, skillful in military affairs, daring, free in speech. A fusion of beneficence and boldness, a general with a just heart, generous, ambitious, judicious. This recalls the thunder god Zeus, wielding thunderbolts with purpose, not caprice, a ruler who harmonizes force with fairness, but ingloriously, mischievous, reckless, cruel, pitiless. The shadow of Mars's fire consumes Jupiter's light, turning the king into a rogue, seditious, quarrelsome, faithless. It's a stark duality, a cosmic tug-of-war where glory elevates and its absence corrupts. A pattern of order and chaos that reverberates through the astrophysical Jupiter's great red spot, a storm both turbulent and structured. With Venus, Jupiter's tune softens into elegance. In a glorious position, he crafts a mind pure, joyous, delighting in elegance, in the arts and sciences, a poet's soul, valuable in friendship, sincere, beneficent, a mirror to Plotinus' soul, gazing at the intellectual principle in Enneads, radiant with beauty, honorable and worthy. It's a mind that sings of philosophia, love of wisdom, and eudaimonia, a flourishing through grace. Yet ingloriously, Venus's softness sours. Luxurious, soft, effeminate, lascivious, a decadent dandy, wasteful without energy, yet oddly observant of holy rites. This tension, nobility versus indulgence, echoes the psychological Jupiter's generative authority, twisted when unchecked, a reminder that even beauty needs ballast. Mercury joins, and Jupiter turns cerebral. Posited in glory, he forges a mind fit for much business, fond of learning, and of geometry and the mathematics. A philosopher-orator, skillful in counsel, politic, philosophical, dignified. A nod to the philosophical Jupiter's rational order. It's the mind of a Plotinian sage grasping eternal forms, or an Aurelian Stoic aligning with cosmic harmony. Ingloriously, frivolous, empty, contemptible. A pretender, magicians and vacillating, yet still skilled in various learning. This duality, wisdom versus folly, mirrors the philosophical paradox of expansion through limitation, a mind that can soar or stumble, depending on its celestial footing. What does this unveil? Jupiter's dominion over the mind is not static. It is, like everything important in life, a dynamic spectrum, a cosmic kaleidoscope where position and partnership shape destiny. Gloriously situated reflects strength, exalted, angular, well-aspected, unleashing virtues that align with the thunder god's justice, the philosopher's reason, the soul's integration. Ingloriously posited, weak, debilitated, afflicted, twists these into shadows, a cautionary tale of potential squandered. With Mars, Venus and Mercury, Jupiter blends their hues, warrior, artist, scholar, each a face of his expansive light, each prone to distortion without balance. This is Jupiter as cosmic conductor, modeling the psyche's constellations, a pattern of harmony and discord that spans our narrative. It's the thunder god's authority refined, not through bolts but through thought. The philosopher's order, not imposed but inspired. The psychological guide, not commanding but revealing. Thus, Ptolemy's vision unveils a greater meaning, the mind's capacity to reflect the cosmos, to rise to nobility or fall to folly, a microcosm of Jupiter's own coordinated movements, chaos tamed by order, expansion tempered by purpose. But beyond the radiant dominion of the mind, Ptolemy's Jupiter influences the entire fabric of human existence. From the mending of flesh to the amassing of riches, from the crafting of livelihoods to the forging of bonds, from the wanderer's path to the final breath, and across the arc of life's seasons. A symphony of purpose and potential, a cosmic dance where Jupiter's warm, moist breath, his life-giving breezes, interweaves with the fates of body, soul, and society. Ptolemy reveals a Jupiter who is both healer and harbinger, sovereign and steward, his light casting a pattern of harmony and abundance that resonates with the thunder god's nurturing storms, the philosopher's ordered cosmos, and the psyche's expansive grace. So let's continue our exploration of the Tetrabiblos. Let's discuss Jupiter's influence on the body, where his practical beneficence shines as brightly as his intellectual radiance. Under Jupiter's influence, they will be healed by means of medical or surgical aid and by diet and medicine. Under Venus, by the guidance of oracles and by divine interposition, Ptolemy declares, distinguishing Jupiter's earthly remedies, scalpel, herbs, regimen, from Venus's mystical cures. Yet this healing hand falters in shadow. The several places of position in the scheme also afford cooperation. For instance, those of the Sun and Mars contribute to insanity, those of Jupiter and Mercury to epilepsy, those of Venus to the fury of enthusiasm, and those of Saturn and the Moon to demoniac affections and moisture of the brain. Here, Jupiter's alliance with Mercury, if ill-placed, stirs the nerves into epileptic fits, a cosmic reminder that even the greater benefics' gifts bear a dual edge. This pattern of vitality and vulnerability echoes the thunder god's dual bolts, life-giving rain or destructive lightning, a balance of order and chaos that threads through the philosophical and psychological dimensions of Jupiter that don't cease to be paradoxical. Then wealth flows next under Jupiter's generous gaze, a tangible bounty rooted in authority and trust. Jupiter will effect the acquirement of wealth by holding some government or office of trust, or by the priesthood, Ptolemy asserts, casting him as a patron of positions, governors wielding scepters, priests bearing sacred rites, where honor yields gold. It is a prosperity that deepens in concert with Saturn. Should Saturn, however, when thus in influence over the fortune of wealth, be also configurated with Jupiter, he particularly provides wealth through inheritance, especially if the configuration should exist in the superior angles, Jupiter being also in a bicorporeal sign and receiving the application of the Moon. For in such a case, the native will also be adopted by persons unallied to him and will become heir to their property. Here, Jupiter's celestial alignment transforms legacies into unexpected kinship, a philosophical echo of the philosophical Jupiter's stewardship over souls tied to stars, a king whose bounty extends beyond merit to providence. Authority proceeding from Jupiter and Venus will be pleasurable and attended by presents and honors, Ptolemy adds, infusing this rule with joy and tribute, a thunderous rain sweetened by grace. From wealth springs occupation, a vibrant garden where Jupiter's testimony cultivates human endeavor. His celestial partnerships shape destinies. If Jupiter joins testimony with Mercury, they will be painters, orators, or pleaders in argument, and occupied with eminent personages, blending eloquence with influence. If Jupiter joins testimony with Venus, persons will become prize wrestlers and garland wearers, and will be advanced in honor through female interest, crowning athletic valor with feminine favor. If Jupiter joins testimony with Mars, they will be soldiers or mechanics, collectors of revenue, innkeepers, toll-gatherers, or attendants on sacrifices, merging martial vigor with civic duty. In triadic harmony, Jupiter's influence blossoms further, with Mercury and Venus, administrators of justice, guardians of public affairs, instructors of youth and magistrates of the people, with Mercury and Mars, honorable warfare and industry, cautious and diligent in business, curious in foreign matters. With Venus and Mars, regulators of sacrifices, augurs, holders of sacred offices. Alone, if Jupiter receives it, the Moon's application, they will be decorous and economical, a steward's thrift rounding out this chorus. This kaleidoscope of callings, noble, practical, sacred, mirrors the thunder god, Zeus delegating domains, a cosmic king whose expansive hand fosters order through diversity. Relationships are the next thread, a delicate yet durable string of love and alliance under Jupiter's warm light. Moreover, should Venus be found connected with Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, she will render wives provident and attached to their husbands and children, while Jupiter, such as are honorable and noble-minded husbands, a marital harmony of thrift and virtue. Yet with Saturn, Venus yields dull and timid husbands. If with Jupiter, the husbands will be good, just, and modest, a contrast of restraint and radiance. Passions are to be considered by observation of Mars, for should he be separated from Venus and Saturn, but yet is supported by the testimony of Jupiter, he will make men pure and decorous in sexual intercourse, while Mars be with Venus alone, or even although Jupiter also be with her, men will become highly licentious. For women, if she be configurated with Jupiter or with Mercury, she will cause women to be temperate and pure. Yet Saturn tends to produce greater obscenity, Jupiter greater decency. Friendship blooms too. Saturn and Jupiter, when making ingress upon each other's places, produce friendship by agriculture or inheritance. Jupiter and Mars by means of dignities. Jupiter and Venus by means of female persons. Jupiter and Mercury by means of eloquence and science. Ptolemy also talks about travel, When Jupiter and Venus may be in dominion, they will render the journeys agreeable. Provided Mercury also be present, utility, profit, presence and honours will likewise be derived. Here, Jupiter's pattern is connection, decorous love, noble bonds, safe passages, a signature of the psychological Jupiter's expansive integration. Life's arc and end fall under his gaze, a rhythm of maturity and mortality. Jupiter occupies the sixth sphere and influences the maturer age during the 12 years corresponding to his own period, producing greater gravity, foresight, prudence and sagacity, a seasoned wisdom easing toil for honour, its annual periods subtly steering fate. Death wears his mark too. Jupiter effects death by quinsy, inflammation of the lungs, diseases arising from the superabundance of air, which is a gentle exit, unless Saturn's suffocation or Mars's wrath of princes twist it, with Jupiter's afflicted testimony turning beastly or public. Cosmic mechanics refine this. The efficacy of purgation is impeded by the moon's conjunction with Jupiter, and, in the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, pronounce according to the nature of that one which may be higher in elevation. This is how our king tempers or yields. The verdict is that Jupiter is a cosmic harmonizer, his beneficence a warm breeze weaving healing, wealth, work, love, travel, and life's seasons into a pattern of order and growth. It's the philosophical Jupiter's rational order lived, the psychological Jupiter's integrative self embodied, a celestial king whose expansive embrace crowns our just acquired knowledge about Jupiter with a harmony as vast as the skies. Here, in the starlit expanse of Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, Jupiter's astrological essence shines with such clarity and depth that we need not wander further into the crowded chorus of later seers. His vision, a cosmic king weaving healing through medicine, wealth through trust, occupations through testimony, love through temperance, travel through favor, and life's arc through wisdom, captures the full spectrum of Jupiter's beneficence, a radiant thread that stitches together the thunder god's vitality, the philosopher's order, and the psyche's harmony. Why seek beyond this second-century scroll when it already unveils a pattern so complete, so resonant with the grand design of Jupiter, present in all astrological thought? Ptolemy's Jupiter is both prism and pinnacle, refracting the celestial light into a holistic truth that later voices might only echo or muddle. His words suffice, a foundational hymn to a sovereign whose influence spans mind, body, and cosmos with timeless grace. And now we turn to the Alchemical Jupiter, where the planet's celestial dance descends into the fire of transformation. Base metal into gold, chaos into cosmos. This is a plunge into the mysteries where Jupiter's airy warmth meets the fire of the alchemist's forge, revealing how his expansive spirit transmutes the raw stuff of existence into meaning and mastery. But remember to reflect on how Ptolemy's Jupiter stirs your own life. Where do you find his healing breezes, his noble callings, his bonds of honor? Share your thoughts, seek his patterns in your stars, and step boldly into the alchemical unknown. For Jupiter's light invites us to move forward like always. We start with Isaac Newton's Index Chemicus, which provides an extraordinary introduction into how the great scientist understood Jupiter's role in the alchemical great work. Here, Newton is compiling and organizing alchemical knowledge, creating a systematic index of key concepts and revealing his deep immersion in Hermetic traditions alongside his pioneering scientific work. Let me present some of its contents. Newton clarifies that the alchemist's Jupiter is not the mythological deity of popular understanding, but the philosophical subject, the very matter of the great work itself. This philosophical Jupiter is the source of all tincture, the transformative essence. Newton connects this to three classical myths: Jupiter as the eagle carrying Ganymede to heaven, representing volatile ascent; Jupiter as golden rain falling into Danae's lap, representing the descent of solar qualities; and Jupiter as the white swan with Leda, representing the white stage of the work. He emphasizes that true alchemical matter must possess both volatility, suitable for flight, and fixity, falling by its weight, the capacity to both ascend and descend during the alchemical process. Without these dual qualities, the substance would delay rather than help the alchemist. Then, Newton cites Michael Meyer's works, noting that Jupiter is identified with Mercury, the philosophical Mercury that is airy and powerful. The curious reference to the white camel, as seventh in number, relates to Jupiter's traditional position as the seventh planet, counting outward from Earth in some medieval systems. Most significantly, Newton notes that this Jupiter-Mercury principle conjoins all the planets together and adheres to bodies, indicating Jupiter's role as the unifying, integrating force that brings disparate elements into a harmonious relationship. Then he writes, "The father of this Jupiter, i.e. whiteness, is blackness, Saturn the sign of truth who devours a stone instead of Jupiter. For blackness, that is, a dark cloud, covers the stone at first so that it cannot be seen, hence Morienus. Every body when it lacks a soul is found dark and obscure. This stone is vomited out again when it becomes white, and then it is set on the peak of Helicon." Here, Newton articulates the crucial alchemical sequence. Jupiter, whiteness, emerges from Saturn, blackness. Saturn devours a stone instead of Jupiter, referencing both the mythological story and the alchemical process, where the initial blackening, nigredo, covers or conceals the philosophical stone. Citing Morienus, Newton notes that bodies lacking soul appear dark and obscure. The stone is vomited out, revealed when it becomes white, when Jupiter's qualities emerge from Saturn's darkness. When this whiteness is achieved, the stone is set on the peak of Helicon, the mountain sacred to Apollo and the Muses, symbolizing illumination and inspiration. Newton also cites Pseudo-Democritus's practical instruction to cleanse tin, Jupiter's metal, through special ablution, washing, which will extract the blackness to reveal whiteness. This corresponds to the alchemical transition from Saturn, blackness lead, to Jupiter, whiteness tin. Saturn is identified as strong water that devours his children, alchemically representing the dissolving acid that breaks down materials into their component elements. However, this same dissolving force eventually vomits the stone for Jove and produces the white stage that follows dissolution. The most acrid vinegar is powerful enough to reduce even gold to mere spirit, completely dissolving it. He continues, "From the air of the philosophers, one must make black lead, from tin lead, which Gebro calls white lead, which teaches by what reason Saturn migrates to Jupiter through a lotion with Mercury. For bright running Mercury, if properly prepared, mends Saturn's nevi and elevates him to the throne of Jupiter." This passage describes the transformation sequence. From philosophical air comes black lead, Saturn, which through lotion with Mercury becomes white lead, Jupiter. Newton cites Geber, Jabir ibn Hayyan, noting that properly prepared Mercury mends Saturn's nevi, blemishes imperfections, and elevates him to the throne of Jupiter. This perfectly captures Jupiter's alchemical role as the evolved, purified form that emerges when Saturn's dense materiality is properly transformed through Mercury's mediating influence. And our last passage from Newton's Index Chemicus: "Saturn therefore is the first gate of the arcana. He is succeeded by Jupiter, who discomfited and ousted his father from the kingdom. From Jupiter, who is white lead prepared for sowing gold in white earth. The rest of the planets Mars, from Juno Mercury, from Maia Diana, and Apollo from Latona, come into light only by cooking." Thus, Newton establishes the alchemical sequence. Saturn, as the first gate of the arcana, mysteries, is succeeded by Jupiter, mirroring the mythological overthrow. The white stage, Jupiter as white lead prepared, serves as the foundation for subsequent developments. It is prepared for sowing gold in white earth. The remaining planets or stages emerge from this Jovian foundation only by cooking, through continued application of alchemical heat. Each planetary stage has its mythological correspondence. Mars from Juno, Mercury from Maia, Diana, and Apollo from Latona. These passages reveal Newton's deep understanding of Jupiter's central role in alchemical transformation as a metal, as a planet, and as a crucial developmental stage where chaotic darkness becomes ordered whiteness, where dissolution gives way to coherent structure. His systematic compilation of alchemical sources demonstrates how seriously he took this tradition, seeing in it profound natural philosophical principles that complemented rather than contradicted his revolutionary scientific work. You know how they say, as above, so below, as below, so above. With this hermetic axiom, we continue the alchemical laboratory, where Jupiter undergoes its most radical transformation, from a distant celestial body to a tangible substance operating within matter itself. Here, amid crucibles and alembics, Jupiter's principles crystallize as material processes rather than metaphor. Although the alchemists love their symbols, Jupiter's metal in the alchemical tradition is tin, according to Paracelsus in his Concerning the Spirits of the Planets, which is remarkably appropriate for a substance meant to embody Jovian qualities. Paracelsus then elaborates on Jupiter's alchemical nature, focusing on its spirit rather than merely its metallic form. Concerning the spirit of Jupiter, this should be known that it is derived from the white and pale substance of fire, together with a nature of peculiar crepitation and fragility, not malleable like Mars. It therefore heats other metals and renders them capable of being broken with hammers. Here Paracelsus reveals something profound about Jupiter's transformative influence. Unlike Mars, iron, which is malleable through force, Jupiter's essence creates a kind of brittleness that allows for breaking and reforming. This paradoxical quality of making things simultaneously stronger, yet more susceptible to transformation, appears in Paracelsus's medical observations as well. If it produces this effect in the bodies of metals, it will do the same in human bodies. Nevertheless, this spirit has in it the virtue of removing cancer, fistulas, and other similar ulcers. Jupiter's alchemical spirit thus embodies a different aspect of the same fundamental Jovian paradox. It can both damage and heal, both strengthen and make vulnerable, depending on context and application. The cosmic physician who knows exactly which disease requires which remedy. Tin's physical properties perfectly embody the Jovian principle. Unlike lead, Saturn's metal, tin is flexible, bright, and resistant to corrosion. When bent, it produces a unique cry, a creaking sound some alchemists would call the voice of Jupiter, the metal expressing its essential nature through sound. Furthermore, tin maintains its luster even when exposed to air and moisture, embodying Jupiter's resistance to corruption and decay. But among the most vivid alchemical descriptions of Jupiter comes from Basilius Valentinus, the enigmatic Benedictine monk whose works profoundly influenced later alchemical tradition. In his treatise of natural and supernatural things, Valentinus provides a remarkable account of tin's nature that seamlessly combines metallurgy, medicine, and cosmic correspondence. Unlike many alchemical texts that shroud their meaning in deliberate obscurity, Valentinus offers direct insights into how Jupiter's qualities manifest in its metal. Let us examine two critical passages that illuminate the alchemical understanding of Jupiter's terrestrial embodiment. The generation of tin in and above the earth is brought to light even as man is and other animals which are originally nourished and fed by the mother's milk. There is no diet to be found on earth more fit for the nourishment of all men than milk. For its best part is chiefly an animal sulfur which yields the nourishment. Even in like manner, tin is nourished by its metallic sulfur, which likewise feeds it with the greatest acceptation. It assumes in and to it more heat than Saturn, therefore is Jupiter more digested and broiled, whereby its body likewise is more fixed and permanent in the degree of salt. In this paragraph, Valentinus establishes a profound analogy between human development and metallurgical processes. By comparing tin's formation to human nourishment through mother's milk, he reveals the alchemical worldview where metals are living entities that grow and develop. His reference to tin containing more heat than Saturn positions Jupiter tin in the traditional alchemical hierarchy as more energetic and vital than lead. The digested and broiled quality refers to tin's greater refinement through alchemical cooking in the earth, making it more fixed and permanent. These qualities reflect Jupiter's position as a more evolved and stable planetary influence than Saturn. Then Valentinus continues, "He causes in his dominion and reign that good rule be observed, and justice done to all men in his court. The spirit of tin is a preserver from all distempers and accidents, whereby the liver is consumed or put into malady. Its spirit is naturally to be compared unto honey in taste. Its mercury, being made volatile, gains a venomous quality, for it purges violently and penetrates through by force. Therefore it is not always to be advised that its opened mercury should be used alone, and simply. But if a correction precede, there may an excellent benefit succeed, being used in those distempers and diseases which are immediately subject to its influence, that is, when its venomous volatility is taken away, and set in a better and fixed estate, which resists the poison. In this second paragraph, Valentinus directly connects tin's properties to Jupiter's mythological role as divine ruler, who ensures good rule and justice. This exemplifies how alchemists perceive direct correspondences between a metal's nature and its planetary deity's attributes. The medicinal properties he describes, specifically tin's relationship to liver health, reinforces the traditional association between Jupiter and that organ. Most revealing is Valentinus's cautionary note about tin's mercury becoming venomous when made volatile, requiring correction before medical use. This reflects the alchemical understanding that Jovian energy must be properly prepared and tempered. Raw Jupiter energy can be overwhelming if not properly contained and directed. The reference to honey-like taste suggests the beneficent, sweet nature of properly prepared Jovian medicines, while the warning about its purgative effects when misused shows the powerful, potentially destructive aspect of untempered Jupiter energy. But we should not stop at metals. Jupiter can also be found in body parts and plants and trees. The physician-alchemist Nicholas Culpeper, in his Complete Herbal, explicitly connects Jupiter to specific bodily organs. Jupiter is the general significator of the liver, and in discussing individual herbs, Culpeper repeatedly identifies those under Jupiter's influence. Water betony is an herb of Jupiter in Cancer and is appropriated more to wounds and hurts in the breast than wood betony, which follows. It is an excellent remedy for sick hogs. It is of a cleansing quality. The leaves bruised and applied are effectual for all old and filthy ulcers, and especially if the juice of the leaves be boiled with a little honey and dipped therein, and the sores dressed therewith, as also for bruises and hurts, whether inward or outward. The distilled water of the leaves is used for the same purpose, as also to bathe the face and hands spotted or blemished, or discolored by sunburning. Common or wood betony is appropriated to the planet Jupiter and the sign Aries. Antonius Musa, physician to the Emperor Augustus Caesar, wrote a peculiar book of the virtues of this herb, and among other virtues saith of it, that it preserves the liver and bodies of men from the danger of epidemical diseases, and from witchcraft also. It helps those that loathe and cannot digest their meat, those that have weak stomachs and sour belchings, or continual rising in their stomachs, using it familiarly, either green or dry, either the herb or root or the flowers in broth, drink or meat, or made into conserve, syrup, water, electuary or powder, as everyone may best frame themselves unto, or as the time and season requires. Taken any of the aforesaid ways, it helps the jaundice, falling sickness, the palsy, convulsions or shrinking of the sinews, the gout and those that are inclined to dropsy, those that have continual pains in their heads, although it turn to frenzy. Dandelion is under the dominion of Jupiter. It is of an opening and cleansing quality, and therefore very effectual for the obstructions of the liver, gall and spleen, and the diseases that arise from them, as the jaundice and hypochondriac. It opens the passages of the urine both in young and old, powerfully cleanses imposthumes and inward ulcers in the urinary passage, and by its drying and temperate quality doth afterwards heal them, for which purpose the decoction of the roots or leaves in white wine, or the leaves chopped as pot herbs with a few alisanders and boiled in their broth, are very effectual. And whoever is drawing towards a consumption or an evil disposition of the whole body, called cachexia, by the use hereof for some time together, shall find a wonderful help. It helps also to procure rest and sleep to bodies distempered by the heat of ague fits or otherwise. The distilled water is effectual to drink in pestilential fevers and to wash the sores. Our ordinary garden sage needs no description. It flowers in or about July. Jupiter claims this, and bids me tell you it is good for the liver and to breed blood. A decoction of the leaves and branches of sage, made and drank, saith Dioscorides. Provokes urine, brings down women's courses, helps to expel the dead child, and causes the hair to become black. It stays the bleeding of wounds and cleanses foul ulcers. 3 spoonfuls of the juice of sage taken fasting with a little honey doth presently stay the spitting or casting of blood of them that are in a consumption. These pills are much commended. Take of spikenard ginger, of each 2 drams. Of the seed of sage toasted at the fire, 8 drams. Of long pepper, 12 drams. All these being brought into powder. Put thereto so much juice of sage as may make them into a mass of pills, taking a dram of them every morning fasting, and so likewise at night, drinking a little pure water after them. Matthiolus saith, it is very profitable for all manner of pains in the head, coming of cold and rheumatic humours, as also for all pains of the joints, whether inwardly or outwardly, and therefore helps the falling sickness, the lethargy, such as are dull and heavy of spirit, the palsy, and is of much use in all defluxions of rheum from the head, and for the diseases of the chest or breast. The leaves of sage and nettles bruised together, and laid upon the imposthume that rises behind the ears, doth assuage it much. The juice of sage taken in warm water helps a hoarseness and a cough. The leaves sodden in wine and laid upon the place affected with the palsy helps much, if the decoction be drank. Also sage taken with wormwood is good for the bloody flux. Pliny saith it procures women's courses and stays them coming down too fast, helps the stinging and biting of serpents, and kills the worms that breed in the ear and in sores. Sage is of excellent use to help the memory, warming and quickening the senses, and the conserve made of the flowers is used to the same purpose, and also for all the former recited diseases. The juice of sage, drank with vinegar, hath been of good use in time of the plague at all times. Gargles likewise are made with sage, rosemary, honeysuckles and plantain, boiled in wine or water, with some honey or alum put thereto, to wash sore mouths and throats, cankers, or the secret parts of man or woman, as need requires. And with other hot and comfortable herbs, sage is boiled to bathe the body and the legs in the summer time, especially to warm cold joints, or sinews, troubled with the palsy and cramp, and to comfort and strengthen the parts. It is much commended against the stitch, or pains in the side coming of wind, if the place be fermented warm with the decoction thereof in wine, and the herb also after boiling be laid warm thereunto. Other herbs are ruled by Jupiter: agrimony, water agrimony, Alexander or wild parsley, angelica, prickly asparagus or sperige, avens, also called colewort and herb bonnet, balm, beets, bilberries, called by some worts and whortleberries, borage and bugloss, sweet chervil or sweet Sicily, the chestnut tree, cinquefoil or 5-leaved grass, called in some counties 5-fingered grass, costmary or oldcost or balsam herb, dock, dog's grass or cough grass, the fig tree, clove gilliflowers, hart's tongue, henbane, hyssop, houseleek or sengreen, liverwort, lungwort, maple tree, the oak, red roses, samphire, scurvy grass, succory or chicory, Our Lady's thistle. These herbs were prescribed for liver complaints and general health, reflecting the Jovian principle of growth and natural expansion. I invite you to research them on your own. What is certain is that these verifiable historical sources demonstrate how Jupiter's qualities were understood and applied in practical alchemical operations. From medicinal herbs to metallurgical processes, the cosmic king's qualities manifested in tangible, workable realities. He operates as forces that can be observed, manipulated, and directed in the physical world. The alchemical Jupiter thus completes our multi-dimensional exploration, revealing how the Jovian principle operates not just in astronomical observations, mythological narratives, philosophical concepts, and psychological patterns, but within the structure of matter that sustains life here in the world we see with our eyes. Yet in each domain, we've discovered the same essential quality, the organizing intelligence that brings coherence through relationship and expands through connection and governs through enablement. What makes the alchemical perspective unique, however, is its insistence that Jupiter represents not just a theoretical principle, but a practical force that can be encountered and worked with directly through appropriate methods and materials. The alchemical tradition reminds us that Jupiter's wisdom isn't merely abstract, but embodied, accessible not just through contemplation, but through practical engagement with the material world. The Cosmic King's qualities are not distant ideals, but living realities within the substances we handle and the bodies we inhabit, waiting to be recognized, activated and expressed through proper understanding and application. Jupiter revealed before us as a cosmic riddle, its swirling storms and ancient hymns revealing a truth that spans the heavens and the human soul. Across millennia, it reigns, king of planets, sovereign of gods, a vast orb of hydrogen and helium cradling a metallic heart, yet also a symbol of order carved from chaos. Its gravitational pull orchestrates a ballet of 95 known moons, from volcanic Io to icy Europa, each a testament to its dominion, much like Zeus in mythology, who bound the cosmos under his rule after toppling the Titans. This interplay of force and harmony mirrors philosophical ideals. Plato's vision of justice as a higher order, or Ptolemy's astrological Jupiter stirring, fertilizing breezes that coax life from barrenness. Psychologically, it calls us to integrate our own contradictions, ambition and restraint, chaos and purpose, into a unified whole. What emerges is a living paradox, expansion that sets boundaries, power that fosters growth, a thunderbolt that shatters only to illuminate. Take the Great Red Spot, a tempest wider than Earth, churning for over 3 centuries yet held in perfect equilibrium by Jupiter's atmospheric bands. A metaphor for chaos sculpted into form, echoing Zeus's triumph over primal disorder to forge a cosmos of law and possibility. In mythology, his eagle soars as both predator and messenger, embodying the dual nature of authority, fierce yet protective. Philosophers saw this too. Plato cast Jupiter as the guardian of the good, striking with precision to uphold balance, while Ptolemy linked it to vitality, a celestial breath animating the inert. Astronomically, Jupiter's sheer mass shields the inner solar system, deflecting comets that might otherwise shatter Earth's fragile cradle, a nurturer cloaked in might. Together, these threads form Jupiter's architecture of meaning. Jupiter as a force that both disrupts and sustains, a riddle that invites us to ponder the vibration of opposites in nature and ourselves. This paradox deepens in Jupiter's alchemical resonance. Tin, its associated metal, shrieks when bent, a cry of tin, a sound alchemists heard as the material spirit awakening, yearning for transformation into gold. This process mirrors Jupiter's role in our lives, a catalyst for turning the raw, unrefined chaos of our experiences into something luminous and enduring. Consider the Roman festival of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, where citizens honored the god as the bestower of abundance, a reminder that true power elevates rather than oppresses. Psychologically, this speaks to our potential, to govern our inner storms, to transmute fear into courage, doubt into wisdom. Gaze upon Jupiter through a telescope, its amber bands glowing against the void, and you see more than a planet or a myth. You see a mirror reflecting our capacity to grow, to harmonize, to wield authority with grace. Its lesson is monumental. Sovereignty is the art of balancing strength with care, freedom with structure, the wild with the refined. Beyond its storms and symbols, Jupiter's place in the solar system amplifies its enigma. Its moons, Ganymede, larger than Mercury or Callisto, scarred by ancient impacts, orbit in a miniature cosmos, each reflecting a facet of Jupiter's influence: creation, endurance, mystery. In astrology, it governs Sagittarius and Pisces, signs of exploration and transcendence, urging us to seek beyond the horizon while plumbing the depths of the soul. This celestial giant, fifth from the sun, stands as a threshold between the rocky inner worlds and the gas giants beyond, a bridge between the tangible and the infinite. To contemplate Jupiter is to wrestle with questions of scale and significance. How do we expand without losing ourselves? How do we wield power without crushing what we cherish? But the answers are not in dogma but in reflection, inviting us to find our equilibrium amid life's turbulence. To you, dear friends of Irrevelato, lovers of wisdom and wanderers of the cosmos, heartfelt thanks for joining us on this journey to the edge of Jupiter's mysteries. Your curiosity lights our path. This is but one star in our constellation. Our channel brims with explorations of Saturn's rings, Pluto's shadows, the Sun's radiance, Uranus's rebellion, and a galaxy of deities, luminaries, and ideas. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Lend your voice to our chorus of inquisitive minds and continue this odyssey into the vast unknown together. Never doubt that the world needs more seekers of knowledge and wisdom, and it's time for you to claim your birthright, because you are one of them.